As soon as the page was released, it began to buzz and tremor incessantly within his grasp, as if it were trying to fly away with all its might. A faint smile appeared on Han Li's face, and he merely rubbed his hands together, upon which the buzzing immediately subsided. He then held the page between two of his fingers, before rustling it in a casual-looking manner. Countless golden runes immediately surged out of the page in a frenzy, quickly forming a passage of text before him. Han Li's eyes narrowed slightly as he began to carefully inspect the passage. Organ Refinement Origin Arts, he murmured to himself as he read the name of the enclosed ability. His expression then changed slightly, as if he had made a sudden realization, and he immediately began to read the rest of the text. Time slowly passed, and a hint of elation gradually crept into Han Li's eyes. Letter 1D627, letter 1D4C7, letter 212F, letter 212F, letter 1D464, letter 212F, letter 1D623, letter 1D450, letter 1D630, letter 1D45A. After reading the entire passage, he swept a sleeve through the air to release a burst of azure light, which instantly scattered the passage of text. After that, he closed his eyes and began to carefully review what he had just read. A long while later, he reopened his eyes and chuckled to himself. How interesting. This is a very rare cultivation art specifically for refining one's organs. After mastering the cultivation art, one's organs would become magic power containers, much like Dantian's, and it can also drastically enhance magic power, as well as manifest many profound abilities. This cultivation art works perfectly in conjunction with the 100 Meridian Refinement mantra. They most likely stem from the same origins. It's quite fortunate that I was able to obtain 2 inner pages of the Golden Jade tome containing immortal secret techniques of the same origins, Han Li murmured to himself, but his brows then furrowed slightly as a thought occurred to him. According to the passage of text, this cultivation art had extremely stringent requirements on one's physical body and meridians. Furthermore, a massive amount of the world's origin chi had to be absorbed to use it, and the rate of cultivation was preposterously slow. Having already cultivated the 100 Meridian Refinement mantra, Han Li's physical body was definitely powerful enough to satisfy the first criteria. However, even if he were to use pills to drastically enhance his rate of cultivation, it would still take over 10,000 years to reach initial mastery in this cultivation art. Hu Yuxuang really wasn't kidding when she said that this cultivation art was going to take longer to master than others. If a normal Grand Ascension stage being were in my place, a minimum of 50,000 to 60,000 years of arduous cultivation would be required to make any substantial progress. The Provenance True Devil arts were already considered to be extremely difficult to cultivate, and he had spent an extensive amount of time on it, but it was nothing compared to this cultivation art. It was no wonder that the He Lion Trade Guild was willing to sell such a burdensome item. However, according to that passage of text, even achieving initial mastery of this cultivation art would result in an astonishing enhancement of one's powers, so it would be a pity to just give up on it. A hesitant look appeared on Han Li's face as he weighed up his options. This immortal secret technique was very tempting, but 10,000 years certainly wasn't a short time. One had to realize that it had only taken him less than 3,000 years to reach the body integration stage from his base as a mortal. As such, he was naturally very hesitant about practicing an auxiliary cultivation art that would take 4 to 5 times as much time to master. All of a sudden, Han Li detected something with his spiritual sense, and a cold look appeared in his eyes as he yelled, "Who's sneaking around there?" He then swept a hand toward the door of his secret chamber, and the door was immediately flung open to reveal a faint humanoid figure. You really are very alert, fellow Taoist Han. I only just arrived here using a secret technique, and you already detected my presence." The blurry figure quickly became clearer as he spoke. Han Li's pupils immediately contracted upon identifying his visitor. "You're quite courageous to have appeared here instead of trying to get away. Aren't you afraid that I'll detain you right here?" he said in a cold voice. The humanoid figure was none other than the black-robed man, who was supposed to have already gotten away. The man currently had a smile on his face, but there was a hint of surprise deep in his eyes, clearly stunned by the fact that he had been discovered so quickly. "If I could get away, then I would have already done so rather than coming here to see you, fellow Taoist Han. That teleportation formation was only a smokescreen that teleported us into another corner of the underground world." The black-robed man chuckled as he strode casually into the secret chamber. Han Li was rather surprised to hear this, but his expression then quickly returned to normal as he said, "That's quite a crafty plan. No wonder fellow Taoist Ming and the others were all fooled. Why have you come here instead of trying to escape? Did you come specifically to see me?" "That's right, I came here to find you," the black-robed man replied with a nod. "Have we met in the past?" Han Li asked with furrowed brows. "Of course not, this is our first meeting," the black-robed man immediately replied. "In that case, why have you come to see him? It sounds like you're not unfamiliar with me. Would you be able to give me an explanation?" Han Li asked in an expressionless manner. "I heard about you from someone else. Do you still recall Fan Pausy, fellow Taoist Han?" the black-robed man asked in an unhurried manner. Han Li was rather taken aback to hear this. "You know fellow Taoist Fan?" "I don't just know him, he's one of my best friends. Otherwise, how could I have heard of you from him? He has a lot of admiration for you and has given you immense praise. I had thought that he was exaggerating, but now that I'm meeting you in person, I'm beginning to believe him," the black-robed man replied with a smile. "You're far too kind, fellow Taoist. Back when I met fellow Taoist Fan, there was no one else around, so the fact that you mentioned him tells me that you're indeed a friend of his. Please forgive me for any transgressions I've made," Han Li said as his expression eased slightly, and he invited the black-robed man to take a seat. It was clear that Fan Pausy had done some research on him, following their first meeting. "Haha, it's only to be expected. I would also be quite wary upon being approached by a stranger like this," the black-robed man said with a smile as he sat down on a futon across from Han Li. "Brother Han, I really do need your help with something. I hope you can lend an ear to my request," the black-robed man continued as his smile faded. "Go ahead," Han Li prompted calmly. "Due to the heist that I just completed, the exits of this underground world and the teleportation halls in this area will all become extremely tightly guarded, so I most likely won't be able to leave this place in the near future through my own power. However, I heard that you secured several intercontinental teleportation spots, and I was wondering if you could take me with you during your teleportation. I'll be sure to compensate you handsomely for this," the black-robed man revealed in a straightforward manner. Han Li was rather surprised to hear this. "You want to use the intercontinental teleportation formation?" "That's right, this is the only method that I can think of that would allow me to get out of this place in the near future," the black-robed man replied with a wry smile. "Why is it that you didn't plan a way to escape after your heist? And where is that companion of yours? You don't seem to have mentioned him at all," Han Li said. "A mishap occurred in the escape measures that he set up, and he was able to escape, but I'm now stuck here without a way out," the black-robed man explained with an awkward expression. "I see, things like this happen from time to time. Having said that, you really did create quite a drama, fellow Taoist. The He-Lion Trade Guild is already offering a reward for your capture, comprised of both the ancestral dragon blood as well as 3 favors from the Trade Guild. Have you already heard about this?" Han Li asked. "Of course. The Trade Guild sure is generous. I'm almost tempted to hand myself in for such a lavish reward," the black-robed man chortled in response, seemingly without a care in the world. Regardless of why the Trade Guild decided to offer such an extravagant reward, it's a reflection of their determination to hunt you down. I wouldn't mind taking you with me during my teleportation, but there are no absolute secrets in this world. What if the Trade Guild finds out what I did after the event? I have some confidence in my own abilities, but I definitely don't want to make a superpower such as the He-Lion Trade Guild my enemy. On top of that, all I know about you is that you're a friend of fellow Taoist fans. I'm not sure I want to get involved in this," Han Li said with a shake of his head. "I see you're concerned about the potential repercussions that could arise from this. Rest assured, I can swear an inner demon vow that I'll never tell anyone about this, and once all is said and done, I won't linger in the spirit realm at all and will return to my race immediately. My race will also take public accountability for this matter, so you won't face any repercussions at all. As for my origins, isn't that already obvious enough considering I'm a good friend of Fan Pausy? S. The black-robed man said with a faint smile. Han Li's expression changed slightly as a thought suddenly occurred to him. "You're a true dragon." "That's right, please forgive me for not revealing this to you sooner," the black-robed man confirmed. "I see, no wonder you came to steal the ancestral dragon blood," Han Li murmured to himself with a peculiar expression. A hint of mockery appeared in the black-robed man's eyes upon hearing this. "Ancestral dragon blood, do you still believe that's what the auction item is?" Chapter 2340, The Nightmare Dragon and Tian Fair. Oh, is it not ancestral dragon blood? Han Li faltered slightly upon hearing this. Not only is it not ancestral dragon blood, it has nothing to do with a true ancestral dragon. Only people outside the dragon race would make such a mistake. Then again, it's an understandable mistake to make. The aura being given off by that drop of blood is indeed a true dragon aura, the black-robed man chuckled. It sounds like you know what it is. Would you be able to tell me? Han Li asked. Of course. In reality, this item is only useful to the dragon race and is completely useless for everyone else. It's true that it's a drop of blood essence, but it belongs to the nightmare dragon rather than the ancestral dragon, the black-robed man revealed. Nightmare dragon? Han Li's brows furrowed slightly with befuddlement. It was clearly his first time hearing such a name. It's no surprise that you haven't heard of the nightmare dragon. There aren't even many people in the dragon race who are aware of such an existence. The nightmare dragon is an existence in the true immortal realm that's no less powerful than the esteemed ancestral dragon, but it's the patriarch of the devilish dragons, which are the sworn enemies of us true dragons. This nightmare dragon blood most likely descended from the true immortal realm, and this is only one drop of 8 in total, the black-robed man explained. 8, there are that many. Han Li was quite stunned to hear this. The elders of our race were able to detect this number through special methods using their bloodline power, and that's why some of my brethren and I were sent out to all the realms to recover these drops of nightmare dragon blood. Even though this blood contains extremely enormous power from the nightmare dragon itself, it's also imbued with chaotic power that can only be slowly refined by us true dragons over time. If anyone else tries to refine this blood by force, not only will they be unable to access the energy in it, their magic power will be contaminated, thereby transforming them into a projection clone of the nightmare dragon. The elders suspect that the nightmare dragon intentionally sent its blood down into the lower realms for this purpose. As the sworn enemies of the devilish dragons, we naturally can't allow this sinister plan to come into fruition, the black-robed man said with a serious expression. In that case, not only is this blood useless to the rest of us, it's extremely dangerous as well. Having said that, with his nightmare dragon blood, the power of your race will be drastically enhanced in the near future. Perhaps there will even be some of you ascending to the true immortal realm, Han Li mused. The black-robed man immediately shook his head in response. Refining nightmare dragon blood is nowhere near as simple as you think, fellow Taoist. The blood is indeed imbued with extraordinary power, but the chaotic power contained within it will take an extremely long time to eradicate, and during this process, much of the energy in the blood will be lost as well. In the end, we'll be lucky if the blood even retains 10% of its original power. On top of that, this energy will only enhance one's magic power and save them some time in their cultivation. For true spirit beings, ascension is countless times more difficult than it is for others. Having said that, this blood could be consumed by some juniors below the grand ascension stage, and there's a chance that it could help them break their bottleneck to become true spirits earlier than they otherwise would. In that case, your true dragon race will most likely be welcoming a few new true spirits soon, Han Li said. That is indeed a possibility, but whether it'll actually happen is still yet to be seen. All of us true dragons possess true spirit bodies from birth anyway, so even if we rely only on gradual accumulation over time, it's not too difficult for us to become true spirits. All right, I've revealed everything about this situation to you. Have you decided whether you're going to help me, Brother Han? The black-robed man asked in a seemingly nonchalant manner. Instead of directly answering this question, Han Li replied in an ambiguous manner. Seeing as you're a friend of Fan Palsy's, and you'll be taking all responsibility publicly for this incident, there's no reason for me to refuse. Has Fan Palsy already given you an invitation for our vast spirit Dao fruit convention? The black-robed man asked with a smile. Are you referring to this? Han Li asked as he flipped a hand over to produce a shimmering silver dragon scale. That's right. If you're willing to help me here, I can assure you that I'll provide you with some minor assistance during the convention, thereby slightly increasing your chances of securing a Dao fruit, the black-robed man said. Contemplative look appeared on Han Li's face upon hearing this. After receiving this invitation, I did some research about this Dao fruit convention, but unfortunately, not many fellow Taoists of the spirit realm seem to know about it. All they know is that invitations to this convention seem to be extremely difficult to obtain. I also heard that this Dao fruit is renowned as the #1 spirit fruit across all realms, but I don't know exactly what it can do. Even across all of the realms, only 1,000 people have been invited to the Myriad Spirit Tao Fruit Convention held on our Dragon Island. The only condition for receiving an invitation is that one must possess power close to or exceeding that of the average true spirit being. Senior Marshall Brother Fan has extremely high standards, so it's truly remarkable that you were able to gain his acknowledgement, Brother Han. Perhaps it's a bit of an exaggeration to say that our Tao fruit is the #1 spirit fruit across all realms, but I'm sure most people will agree that it definitely belongs in the top 3. After all, those who consume the fruit will attain vast spirit Tao physiques for 10,000 years, during which time their cultivation and ability to learn and understand cultivation arts will be enhanced by around 8-fold. The black-robed man chuckled. 8-fold? Han Li was truly stunned to hear this, and an incredulous look appeared on his face. That's right. Each person can only consume a single vast spirit Tao fruit in their life. Consumption of the fruit can temporarily allow one to attain the legendary vast spirit Tao physique. The physique won't assist you in battle, but it's incredibly useful for cultivation and mastering cultivation arts, the black-robed man said with a hint of yearning in his eyes. If this fruit really does possess such incredible abilities, then it's no exaggeration to say that it's the #1 spirit fruit across all realms. However, it sounds like the fruit will be extremely difficult to obtain even if one gets to participate in this convention. How will you be able to assist me? Even if you're a true dragon yourself, I'm sure it'll be very difficult for you to swing things in my favor when it comes to obtaining such a precious treasure, Han Li said in a calm manner. Rest assured, Brother Han, I've already been assigned the role of one of the 36 overseers of the convention for this edition. On the surface, I won't be able to help you, but I can pass some information about other people onto you, as well as some other obscure information that's inaccessible to outsiders, the black-robed man replied. Is that it? Han Li's brows furrowed slightly upon hearing this. You should be satisfied with that, fellow Taoist. Vast spirit Tao fruits are extremely precious, and all of the people attending the convention will be powerful beings. On top of that, the past track record of the convention indicates that only 1 out of over 100 people will obtain a Tao fruit, while others will only be able to taste some spirit juice made from diluted Tao fruit juice. This spirit juice is also extremely precious to cultivators like us, but it's completely incomparable to the Tao fruit itself. I would already be making an exception by providing information to help you. Perhaps my assistance will be the difference between obtaining a Tao fruit and failing to do so, the black-robed man said with a faint smile. You're right, I was being too greedy there. In that case, I agree to this deal, Han Li decided after a brief moment of contemplation. I knew you'd agree, Brother Han. I'll hide here for a few days, and when the time arrives, we'll be able to leave this continent together, the black-robed man said in an elated manner. That's not an issue, but I only purchased 3 teleportation spots. How will you be able to accompany me during the teleportation without being noticed? Han Li asked. Rest assured, fellow Taoist, I've cultivated an imitation secret technique that can allow me to pose as an accessory, and there's a good chance I'll even be able to fool a true immortal with this secret technique, the black-robed man replied in a confident manner. Han Li's expression eased slightly upon hearing this. All right, then there shouldn't be any problems. Seeing as everything has been decided, I won't disrupt you any longer. I need to go and find a room to rest as well. I've been searching for this drop of nightmare dragon blood non-stop these past few years, and I haven't truly slept once during this time, the black-robed man said as he rose to his feet, then departed after extending a parting salute. Right as the black-robed man was departing, a peculiar look appeared on Han Li's face as he said, I hope to be able to see you in your true form next time we meet, fellow Taoist. The black-robed man stiffened slightly upon hearing this, following which a peal of tinkling female laughter suddenly rang out. So you've already seen through my disguise. In that case, I'll present myself to you in my true appearance next time we meet. By the way, my name is Tian Feier. Make sure you remember that. Immediately thereafter, she vanished from the secret chamber in a flash. Tian Feier, eh? She's most likely quite an important figure in the dragon race, Han Li murmured to himself with a contemplative expression. 4 days later, Han Li was in the process of meditating in the secret chamber when a burst of crimson flames flew into the room before landing in his grasp. Ming Zun's calm voice then rang out from within the flames. Fellow Taoist Han, the teleportation formation is ready. Chapter 2341, Arriving on the Blood Sky Continent. Within a secretive and heavily guarded hall in the underground world was a giant formation that was releasing resplendent 5-colored light. Around a dozen black-armored guards were busy at work in the formation, quickly placing one top-grade spirit stone after another into the slots on the formation. At the same time, there were over other people standing in the hall outside the formation. Among them, there were only 5 Grand Ascension stage beings, while the rest were mostly comprised of body integration stage beings, and only 7 or 8 were of a lower cultivation base than that. The Blood Soul and Zhu Gyur were naturally included in that final group. Han Li was standing in one corner of the hall with the 2 women and Patriarch Huashi, calmly appraising the busy guards inside the formation. The 12 fragrant maidens naturally couldn't be teleported to the Blood Sky continent with them, so the Trade Guild was tasked with sending them to the human race. The other Grand Ascension stage beings in the hall were clearly very proud, and they were split up into distinct groups with their respective entourages, displaying no intention to communicate with one another. The other foreign beings didn't even dare to look at Han Li and the other Grand Ascension stage beings, as they also waited in silence. All of a sudden, the sound of footsteps rang out, and Ming Zun strode into the hall with Fairy Fei Yun. All of the Grand Ascension stage beings immediately directed their attention toward the duo, and Han Li also did the same after gently tapping a green bracelet on his wrist. This seemingly ordinary storage bracelet was none other than Tian Fair. Fellow Taoists, this teleportation formation can generally only be used once every century, so I came here in person to ensure that nothing goes wrong with the teleportation, Ming Zun said with a smile, and his gaze lingered on Han Li momentarily before he looked away. He with you here person, I'm sure nothing will go wrong here, brother Ming, an extremely thin and tall Grand Ascension stage being said with a smile. Everyone else also offered some words of gratitude with smiles on their faces. Ming Zun was one of the most powerful figures in the Trade Guild, so no one dared to show any disrespect toward him. Ming Zun spoke briefly with the other 4 Grand Ascension stage beings one after another before finally getting to Han Li. He cupped his fist in a salute and said, "I've heard much about you, brother Han. If it weren't for the mishap that had taken place during the auction, I had planned to pay you a visit in person. Please forgive me for failing to do so." "You're far too kind, brother Ming. I was quite honored to have met so many fellow Taoists of the same cultivation base as myself during the auction," Han Li replied with a smile as he returned the salute. The other Grand Ascension stage beings were quite surprised at the attitude being displayed by Ming Zun toward Han Li. One had to realize that Ming Zun was one of the most renowned powerful beings on the Tian Yuan continent. The fact that he was treating Han Li as an equal indicated that Han Li was clearly no ordinary Grand Ascension stage being either. "I believe an introduction is in order, brother Ming," the tall and thin Grand Ascension stage being said. Before Ming Zun could give a reply, Han Li gave a self-introduction. "My name is Han Li. It's a pleasure to make your acquaintance." "Han Li, you're the human Grand Ascension stage being who ventured into the Elder Devil realm and slew the Stembora Queen." All of the Grand Ascension stage beings' expressions changed drastically upon hearing this. At this point, it was apparent to all of them that Ming Zun had most likely come here solely to see Han Li. Otherwise, there was no way that someone of his esteemed prestige would come here in person. "I did indeed go to the Elder Devil realm, but I didn't kill the Stembora Queen on my own. All of the rumors have painted me in far too flattering a light," Han Li replied. All of a sudden, the other Grand Ascension stage beings became far more hospitable toward Han Li, and they all made self-introductions before engaging in conversation with him, with Ming Zun occasionally interjecting on the side. Shortly thereafter, a faint buzzing sound rang out within the hall. All of the spirit stone slots on the giant formation had been filled, and the formation lit up as countless 5-colored runes appeared all over its surface. "The spirit stones have been installed. You may all enter the formation now," Ming Zun said after taking a glance at the formation. "Take care, brother Ming. I'll be taking my leave now." Han Li cupped his fist in a salute before making his way toward the formation with his small entourage. The other Grand Ascension stage beings also followed suit. Thus, all of the people waiting in the hall quickly entered the formation, then vanished amid a flash of dazzling light. "They're finally gone. Master Ming, was that true dragon really among them?" Fairy Fei Yun asked after heaving a sigh of relief. "There's only one way to find out," Ming Zun replied before making a grabbing motion toward the giant formation, upon which a round formation plate immediately flew out of the formation before landing in his grasp. This was a translucent formation plate with spirit symbols akin to the markings of a compass running along its edge, and most of the markings were flashing with faint light. Fei Yun took a glance at the formation plate before an elated look quickly appeared on her face. There are 57. As expected, there was an extra person's worth of teleportation energy expended than expected. I wonder how she managed to do it. None of the restrictions in the hall were able to detect her. The true dragons possess unfathomable powers, so it's no surprise that she had some type of cultivation art or treasure that could allow her to escape our detection. This was her only opportunity to return to the dragon race in the near future. Now that the nightmare dragon blood has been taken out of our hands, we can all heave a huge sigh of relief, Mingzun replied with a faint smile. It's a good thing a close friend of yours from the dragon race informed us that it was nightmare dragon blood rather than ancestral dragon blood. Otherwise, if it had been sold or we had enforced stronger measures and harmed the dragons performing the heist, it would have spelled a lot of trouble for our trade guild, Fei Yun said with a wry smile. Given the properties of the nightmare dragon blood, it would definitely have been a ticking time bomb if it had been sold. However, handing it over to the dragon race would have been a display of weakness that would have placed our trade guild in a bad light. Even though allowing those two to get away would also affect our guild's reputation, it's the better alternative in comparison, Mingzun mused. That's true. It was too late to employ any other course of action anyway, so this was our only choice, Fei Yun replied in a respectful manner. All right, that brings this matter to a conclusion. Keep the bounty for those two, but it'll just be for show. I'm sure everyone will forget about this incident in a few years. Let's go back. The auction may have concluded, but there are still some things that must be taken care of, Mingzun said before departing, followed closely by Fei Yun. Han Li was naturally unaware that the Nightmare Dragon blood heist had actually been partially orchestrated by the He Lion Trade Guild. Even if he did hear about it, he wouldn't have thought much of it anyway. The white light around him faded, and he quickly recovered from the rush of teleportation dizziness, but upon which he immediately identified that he had arrived in another giant formation. There was a spacious area around the giant formation that was paved with bluestone, and only a man and a woman were situated in the area. The man had a round face and appeared to be around 30 years of age, and he cupped his fist in a salute with a benevolent smile on his face. Welcome, seniors and fellow Taoists, to the Blood Sky Continent. My name is Fang Jin, and I'm the supervisor of the He Lion Trade Guild here. If anyone has any questions, feel free to direct them toward me, and I'll be sure to answer them to the best of my abilities. In contrast, the young woman beside him was much more cold and forbidding, and she was appraising everyone in the formation in silence. These two both at the body integration stage, so most of the people in the teleportation formation hurriedly returned their salute, and one of them immediately asked, "Fellow Taoist Fang, do you have a map of the nearby area with annotations of the powers that we need to look out for?" "Of course. Those who require such a map can receive a copy from me," Fang Jin immediately replied before sweeping a sleeve through the air, releasing several tens of jade slips of different colors. Everyone was quite pleased to see this, and they each took a jade slip for themselves. Some of the more eager individuals only briefly inspected their jade slips before quickly departing, while the others also left after asking some questions, including the 4 Grand Ascension stage beings and their entourages. Thus, Han Li was the only Grand Ascension stage being left near the formation, and he was joined by several foreign beings who seemed to be from the same group. The group of beings were currently discussing something quietly among themselves. "Let's go." After briefly inspecting the contents of the jade slip, Han Li also prepared to depart. Of course, he hadn't taken a jade slip in person. It was Patriarch Huashi who had collected jade slips for everyone in the group. The Blood Soul and the others naturally didn't offer any objections, yet just as they were about to depart, the woman suddenly called out, "Please wait, fellow Taoist Han. I was sent here with the sole purpose of welcoming you, and I hope you can come with me." The woman's voice was surprisingly sweet and pleasant to the ears. "You were sent here to welcome me. By who? Someone from your He Lion Trade Guild." Han Li was quite surprised to hear this. Chapter 2342, 8 Buddha Devouring Ghosts. "I am indeed a member of the Trade Guild, and I was instructed to come here by the manager of the Trade Guild on the Blood Sky Continent, Master Bai Ying. He would like to see you, Senior Han," the woman replied in a respectful manner. "Bai Ying. This is the first time I'm hearing this name, but seeing as he's the manager of your guild on this continent, he must be quite a renowned figure. What would he like to see me for?" Han Li asked. At this point, it was already apparent to him that Ming Zun had to have told this Bai Ying about him. Otherwise, why would this woman be here specifically for him? I'm afraid I don't know the answer to that. I was merely instructed to invite you to meet with Master Bai Ying. If you have any questions, you can ask Master Bai Ying in person, the woman replied. Did fellow Taoist Bai not tell you anything when he instructed you to come and see me? How is he so sure that I'll agree to meet him? Han Li chuckled coldly in response. Master Bai gave something to me prior to coming here, and he asked me to deliver it to you in person, the woman replied. Oh, go ahead and show it to me, Han Li prompted as his eyes narrowed slightly. Yes, please take a look, senior. The woman immediately summoned a crimson scroll, which she offered up to Han Li with both hands. Han Li swept a hand through the air to draw the scroll into his own grasp, then swept his spiritual sense toward it, upon which his brows furrowed slightly. He opened the scroll to discover that there was an inky black image of 8 ghosts devouring a Buddha etched on the scroll. The 8 ghosts were extremely vicious in appearance, and they were wielding different types of bone weapons as they surrounded a monk with a blurry set of facial features. The image was extremely lifelike, and it seemed that the monk was on the verge of being dismembered and devoured. Han Li's expression remained unchanged as he appraised the image, but he was feeling rather perplexed internally about why he was being shown this image. Right at this moment, a burst of crimson light suddenly flew out of the scroll before hurtling directly toward Han Li. Han Li faltered slightly upon seeing this before instantly sweeping his spiritual sense toward the crimson light. Upon determining what the crimson light was, he made no effort to evade and allowed himself to be swept up by the light, upon which he was drawn into the image in a flash. The Blood Soul and the others were naturally very alarmed by this, and several bursts of black chi immediately erupted out of Patriarch Huaxi's back. The burst of black chi then transformed into giant black pythons that were over 100 feet in length, while Patriarch She appraised the woman with animosity in his eyes, preparing to strike as soon as she made any suspicious movements. Rest assured, fellow Taoists, Senior Han is fine. He was merely drawn into the image by a wisp of Master Bai Ying's soul for a private meeting, and he'll return soon, the woman said in a calm manner. Is that true? If something happens to Master Han in there, don't blame me for turning on you, Patriarch Huaxi threatened. If Senior Han doesn't come out soon, then you can hold me accountable, the woman replied with a smile. She seems to be telling the truth, brother Shi. Let's wait here and see what happens. With Senior Han's powers, I'm sure he won't be in any danger, the Blood Soul said. Patriarch Huaxi felt this to be reasonable, and he withdrew his giant pythons before standing off to the side with a dark expression. Meanwhile, Zhu Gyur was appraising the image with a hint of concern in her eyes. The image was currently hovering in midair and enshrouded within crimson light that was able to keep out everyone's spiritual sense. There was even a bloody odor wafting out of the strange image. The group of foreign beings nearby hurriedly concluded their discussion upon seeing this, then quickly flew away in fear of being swept up in whatever was happening. Meanwhile, Fang Jin remained present with a faint smile on his face. At the same time, Han Li was situated in a mysterious space within the image, appraising a meditating gray-robed monk in front of him with slightly furrowed brows. Judging from his attire, this monk was the same as the one that had been surrounded by the 8 ghosts in the image. However, the monk was currently as still as a statue, and the malicious ghosts were nowhere to be seen. Han Li inspected his surroundings to find thick crimson mist that was as viscous as treacle all around him, only just over 100 feet away. There were wisps of baleful chi surging within the blood mist, and as soon as his spiritual sense came into contact with this baleful chi, the former would immediately become extremely sluggish, as if it had come into contact with some glacial object. A hint of surprise flashed through Han Li's eyes upon seeing this. Right at this moment, a thunderous roar rang out within the blood mist, following which it parted to reveal 8 sinister ghosts, each of which was over 100 feet tall. These ghosts were wearing beast-thighed garments on their lower bodies, while their upper bodies were completely bared. They had pairs of strange horns on their heads, as well as ghostly patterns all over their skin, and they immediately surrounded Han Li as soon as they emerged from the mist. Letter 1D4F, letter 1D4FB, letter 1D486, letter 1D65A, letter 1D498, letter 1D4E, letter 1D4FF. Letter 1D658, letter 1D4F8, letter 1D662. What's the meaning of this, fellow Taoist Bai Ying? Han Li suddenly asked in a cold voice as he turned to the monk with a dark expression. The monk stirred slightly upon hearing this, and he opened a pair of bleary eyes, as if he hadn't fully woken up yet. "Oh, how did you know I was here, fellow Taoist Han? I may not have been a grand ascension stage being for long, but I've witnessed this type of spiritual sense technique in the past. I had thought that you had summoned this treasure to discuss something with me in private, so I allowed you to pull me in here, but it seems like you have some different intentions," Han Li said. "Please don't misunderstand, fellow Taoist Han. I did draw you in here as I had something to tell you, but this is a very important matter, and I must verify if you have what it takes to hear about this first. These 8 infernal ghost monarchs aren't very powerful, but they're wielding true infernal netherworld winds. If a normal cultivator were to come into contact with even the slightest amount of this wind, they would immediately be eroded into nothingness, so even the average grand ascension stage being wouldn't dare to face this wind head-on. If you can traverse freely through this wind without using any treasures for 15 minutes, then you'll have passed my test, and I'll be sure to offer you an apology, as well as disclose what I wish to discuss with you today. If you can't do this, then I'll have to eject you out of this image and pretend as if nothing ever happened," the monk replied in an expressionless manner. Almost at the exact same moment, the 8 ghosts let loose low roars before opening their mouths to release inky black gusts of yin winds, forming massive walls of wind that sealed away all avenues of escape before converging toward Han Li. A hint of surprise flashed through his eyes at the sight of the oncoming yin winds, but his expression quickly returned to normal as he said, "Opposing these infernal netherworld winds without any treasures is an interesting challenge, but aren't you underestimating me a little too much here?" All of a sudden, a layer of golden light appeared over his body, and the black winds were kept at bay around 10 feet away from him, unable to advance any further. The monk's pupils contracted slightly upon seeing this, but he remained expressionless as he said, "Your powers are indeed incredible, fellow Taoist, but don't grow complacent. This isn't the extent of the infernal netherworld wind's power. It's capable of adjusting its own power depending on the power of its foe." "Is that so? I'm very interested to see this infernal netherworld wind in action then," Han Li said in an indifferent voice. As soon as his voice trailed off, a burst of incredible power erupted out of the yin winds, and the golden light released by Han Li was instantly compressed inward upon coming into contact with this tremendous force. Even though the golden light was only forced back by about half a foot before it was bolstered by Han Li again, he was still rather intrigued to see this. "This infernal netherworld wind really is quite interesting. You wouldn't mind if I took some for my own research, will you, fellow Taoist?" Han Li asked. The monk was rather taken aback by this request, but he replied with a faint smile, "If you're capable of doing that, then go right ahead. I have plenty of this yin wind in my possession." "All right, then pardon my intrusion," Han Li said as he made a hand seal, upon which the Provenance True Devil projection appeared behind him amid a flash of golden light. The projection was over 100 feet tall, with countless golden runes all over its body, and it was radiating scintillating golden light. As soon as it appeared, it raised its 6 arms while chanting an incantation, and 6 golden balls of light appeared over its palms, then sprang forth before combining to form a massive golden vortex in front of Han Li. Han Li pointed a finger at the vortex and uttered the word "gather." A loud rumbling immediately rang out, and countless golden runes surged out of the vortex alongside several bursts of enormous suction force. As soon as the fearsome yin wind came into contact with this suction force, it was drawn into the vortex as pillars of wind, as if it had encountered the bane of its existence. The pillars of wind plunged into the golden vortex, and it was as if they were erased out of existence. The massive black walls of wind were reduced to tatters in the blink of an eye. Even the 8 ghosts that were releasing black wind with all their might were beginning to involuntarily approach the golden vortex, unable to resist its suction force. Chapter 2343, 10 Monarchs of the Netherworld. A hint of surprise flashed through the monk's eyes upon seeing this, and he immediately swept a sleeve through the air, releasing a burst of energy fluctuations that severed the enormous suction force being released by the golden vortex. "Please have mercy, fellow Taoist Han. You've already passed the test, and those 8 ghost monarchs are still useful to me, so please spare them." Upon regaining their freedom, the 8 ghosts let loose low roars before disintegration into specks of black chi. "Rest assured, fellow Taoist, I wouldn't have actually attacked those 8 ghosts. I was merely curious and wanted to examine their power," Han Li chuckled in response. Letter 1D453, letter 1D45F, letter 1D452, letter 1D626, letter 1D4CC, letter 1D452, letter 1D4B8, letter 1D630, letter 1D45A. The projection and golden vortex behind him then vanished in unison, but an inky black ball had appeared in his hand, and he was appraising it in an intrigued manner. This was none other than the infernal netherworld wind that he had gathered with his revolving golden light. However, the wind had been compressed into this ball by his enormous magic power. Your powers far exceed my expectations, Brother Han. It seems that the rumors were true, and I was foolish to have implemented this test, the monk said. Seeing as I've passed your test, can we move on to the topic of discussion? Han Li asked. Of course, you have the right to hear what I have to say. I'm sure you're already aware of who I am, the monk replied. If the woman outside hadn't lied to me, then you should be the manager of the He-Lion Trade Guild on the Blood Sky continent, which would make you equivalent in status to fellow Taoist Ming Zun, Han Li said. That's correct, but how much do you know about our He-Lion Trade Guild? The monk asked. I'm afraid I don't know too much. All I know is that the Trade Guild is extremely powerful and is one of very few super organizations that span across all 3 continents, Han Li replied with furrowed brows. In reality, our guild is quite a loose organization. Aside from the branches on each continent that were set up to facilitate easier exchange of resources and information, there are no set rules and duties. Generally speaking, whenever conflicts arise, the panel of Grand Ascension Stage elders in the guild will pass down their judgment. I was assigned the duty of temporary manager of the guild on this continent by the elders. If any Grand Ascension Stage fellow Taoists wish to join our guild, they'll generally become guest elders. This role won't affect their daily cultivation, nor their status in their own respective races, and they'll get to enjoy many incredible benefits. Their only duty will be to assist the guild in times of peril, the monk said in an unhurried manner. Why are you telling me this, fellow Taoist? Han Li asked. I want to formally invite you to join our trade guild. Would you be interested? The monk asked as a smile appeared on his face for the first time. Did you invite me here and conduct that examination just for this? Han Li asked in a calm manner. Of course not, but if you can become a member of our guild, I'll have fewer qualms about sharing what I'm about to discuss with you, the monk replied. I have some interest in the He-Lion Trade Guild, but I still want to hear what you want to discuss with me first before I make any other decisions, Han Li replied. All right, in that case, I won't force the issue. How much do you know about the infernal realm and the netherworld, fellow Taoist? The monk asked. Han Li was rather taken aback to hear this. The infernal realm. I often hear about it, but I've never heard of anyone who's actually seen it. As for the netherworld, its existence is nothing more than an unverified legend. At the very least, I'm unable to confirm whether it exists or not. Does our topic of discussion have something to do with those 2 places? That's right. Over 100 years ago, our guild unintentionally discovered the entrance to a new small world while exploring a certain spatial rift on the Blood Sky continent. A new small world, is that true? Han Li was quite stunned to hear this. 100%. Even though it's a new small world, it's most likely already existed for many years. It's just that no highly intelligent life forms have been born in that world, and it's never been discovered before. Just as our guild was preparing to dedicate a massive amount of resources to develop this small world, we discovered that beings from another realm had also infiltrated the small world. A reminiscent look appeared in the monk's eyes as he spoke. He then continued, as soon as we clashed with these new enemies, we were all given quite a fright, as these were all ghostly beings like the ones you had just battled. Their powers vary drastically, with the weakest ones only roughly equivalent in power to chi condensation stage beings, while the most powerful ones could compare with body integration and grand ascension stage beings of our spirit realm. That infernal netherworld wind was something I managed to collect after facing a powerful ghostly being in battle, and the 8 ghost monarchs were also manifested from the auras that I extracted from those ghostly beings. Of course, I was only able to imitate their form. Their actual power is incomparable to that of true ghost monarchs. The most powerful infernal ghost monarchs are beings that can rival the likes of you and me in power. According to these beings, the realm they come from is known as the infernal realm, and they serve the 10 monarchs of the netherworld. Our trade guild clashed with these ghostly beings in several major battles over this small world, but neither side could gain the upper hand, and countless casualties arose. In order to avoid further casualties for both sides, we made a pact with those ghostly beings, arranging a match between the most powerful beings of our two sides to decide how much resources each side can claim from that small world. I want to invite you to participate in this match as one of our guild's representatives. Of course, if you could join our guild, then your inclusion would be more justified. Regardless of the outcome of your battle, as long as you participate, our guild will be sure to reward you handsomely, the monk revealed. I see. Is this infernal realm the actual infernal realm in the legends? And what type of beings are those 10 monarchs of the netherworld? Will they be participating in this match? Hanley asked. Our guild conducted an investigation into this, and even though we don't have much evidence, we believe this realm isn't the true infernal realm. Instead, it's most likely just another realm suitable for powerful ghostly beings to inhabit. As for the 10 monarchs of the underworld, they are formidable beings who are even more powerful than the ghost monarchs, and it's most likely the case that they'll participate in this match, the monk replied. It's a pity that this isn't the true infernal realm. I had thought that I would finally get to explore the secrets of reincarnation, Hanley said as he stroked his own chin in a disappointed manner. This realm may not be the true infernal realm, but the abilities cultivated by those ghostly beings are vastly different from ours, and they're fundamentally different life forms, so perhaps you'll be able to glean some of the secrets of the Tao of reincarnation through battling them, the monk said with a smile. Hanley offered no response to this, and only after a long while did he ask, where and when is this match being held, and how many battles will be in this match, aside from myself, which other fellow Taoists will be representing the trade guild? As opposed to being displeased by Han Li's thorough line of questioning, the monk's eyes lit up as he hurriedly replied, the match will take place in 3 years in that new small world, and there will be a total of 5 battles. Aside from myself, the other participants will be a fellow Taoist from the guild's Thunder Continent branch, a guest elder from the panel of elders, and a top-tier blood Tao powerful being from the Blood Sky Continent. If you decide to participate as well, then our lineup will be complete. Rest assured, these battles are only sparring contests, so even if you lose, your safety won't come under any threat. On top of that, if you can secure a victory, I can allow you to enter our guild's heaven scaling pavilion to choose any one immortal secret technique from the true immortal realm on top of the predetermined reward. A secret technique from true immortal realm. Did I hear that right? Han Li was very surprised to hear this. That's right. Our guild possesses several immortal secret techniques, and not many people know about them, but it's not the best kept secret either. The seniors who founded our trade guild were descendants of true immortals that were left behind in the spirit realm, and the trade guild was once an extremely secretive investigative organization set up by the true immortal realm in the spirit realm, so all of its important members were also direct lineal descendants of true immortals. As such, it's no surprise that they possess some immortal secret techniques. However, due to the spatial storm, all realms suddenly lost contact with the true immortal realm, so our seniors were forced to recruit some powerful outsiders into the organization, and that's how our trade guild came into existence. As such, not only is our organization a trade guild that spans across the 3 continents, it's also responsible for ensuring the safety of this realm in the shadows, battling against threats that arise against our realm. For example, our trade guild had sent some Grand Ascension stage fellow Taoists into the Elder Devil realm to slay the Stembora Queen. Unfortunately, all of them were trapped in that seal before they had a chance to do anything, and it was all thanks to you that they were rescued, so technically speaking, you're a benefactor to many of the elders of our trade guild, the monk explained with a smile. A contemplative look appeared on Han Li's face upon hearing this. Chapter 2344, Blood Crane City. May I ask how much the trade guild knows about the ancient altars on this continent? Han Li suddenly asked. The monk was rather taken aback to hear this. How much we know? What do you mean by that, fellow Taoist? I'm asking about how many altars your trade guild knows the location of, Han Li clarified. I'm not sure about other continents, but here on the Blood Sky Continent, we should have a grasp on the location of around 70% to 80% of all ancient altars. Are you interested in these things, Brother Han? The monk asked. It was no wonder that he found this to be strange. These ancient altars were generally defunct, so they were largely useless to Grand Ascension stage beings like them. I'll have to put more consideration into whether I want to join the trade guild, as this isn't a decision to be made lightly. However, I can agree to participate in the match, but aside from the compensation you just mentioned, I have another condition, Han Li said. What is it? A hint of caution appeared in the monk's eyes upon hearing this. I wish to be able to make use of your guild's information-gathering avenues during my time on the Blood Sky continent, so I can access the information I want as quickly as possible. As for the information about the ancient altars, I would like a detailed distribution map right away, Han Li replied. The monk's expression eased slightly upon hearing this, and he nodded in agreement. That's not an issue. I agree to your request. As for the ancient altars, I'll get someone to deliver a distribution map to you immediately after you leave this space. Good. As long as your trade guild keeps its promise, I'll be sure to attend the match in 3 years, Han Li assured with a smile. I have no reasons not to trust a promise from a man of your status. Here is a token. Please keep it safe. When the match is about to begin, it'll notify everyone, and when that time comes, just go to any subsidiary site of our guild, and you'll be taken to the entrance of the small world, the monk said as he flipped a hand over to produce a formation plate. All right, I'll see you and the other fellow Taoists on the cusp of the match then. Han Li stowed the formation plate into his storage bracelet as he spoke. After that, the monk told him about some precautionary aspects of the match, then gave him an even more detailed map of the Blood Sky continent before finally releasing him out of this space. All of a sudden, Han Li re-emerged in the outside world, enshrouded within a ball of crimson light. Master Han, Senior Han. Everyone hurriedly greeted him with respectful salutes. Sorry to make you worry, Han Li said to his entourage with a faint smile. At this point, the woman from the trade guild had already received instructions from Bai Ying, and she said in a respectful manner, Senior Han, I've already sent out a message requesting the information that you want. It should arrive soon, so please wait here for now. I've already stayed here for quite some time. It's not like waiting a bit longer will make any difference, Han Li replied in a calm voice. The woman didn't dare to say anything further, and she extended a respectful bow before rolling up the scroll that Han Li had just emerged from, then stood off to the side in silence. Fang Jin also remained silent as he stood still on the spot with a respectful expression. Only after more than 2 hours had passed did a streak of crimson light appear in the distant sky, then approached everyone at an incredible speed, arriving on the scene after just a few flashes. The woman made a hand seal before raising a hand upward, and the streak of crimson light immediately descended as a crimson flying sword, attached to which was a yellow jade slip. This is the information about the ancient altars that you requested, Senior Han. The woman removed the jade slip from the sword before hurriedly handing it over to Han Li. Han Li accepted the jade slip before injecting his spiritual sense into it, upon which a pleased look appeared on his face. This is indeed a very detailed distribution map. It's getting late, so it's about time we set off now. Han Li stowed the jade slip away, then raised a hand to release a ball of black light, which instantly transformed into the mountainous ink spirit Holy Ark. Fang Jin and the woman were both quite startled by the sudden emergence of such an enormous object, while Han Li and the others flew onto the ark, following which it quickly sped away as a streak of black light. In the blink of an eye, Fang Jin and the woman were the only 2 people remaining on the scene. Right as the giant ark disappeared into the distant sky, the woman suddenly turned to Fang Jin before extending a respectful bow. Master Bai Ying, it looks like Senior Han has already agreed to represent our guild. In that case, our chances of securing victory will be bolstered even further. Fellow Taoist Han does indeed possess incredible powers, but against a monarch of the netherworld, his chances of victory are only around 50%. Having said that, our trade guild won't be able to find any better representative during the next 3 years. I just hope that not all of the infernal realm's representatives will be monarchs of the netherworld, Fang Jin replied with a smile, then suddenly grew drastically taller as he transformed into a green-robed elderly man with a pair of murky eyes. This Fang Jin was actually none other than Bai Ying in disguise. He was somehow able to disguise himself and even restrict his own cultivation base to the body integration stage, but it was unclear whether Han Li had been fooled. What did the trade guild want from you, Senior Han? It's not going to affect the objective of our trip, is it? The Blood Soul asked with a hint of concern in her eyes. Rest assured, fellow Taoist, the He Lion Trade Guild is only asking for a small favor from me, and it won't affect our original plan at all, Han Li replied with a smile. The Blood Soul's expression eased slightly upon hearing this. That's good to hear. All of a sudden, Han Li flicked his wrist and said, Fairy Tian, you can show yourself now, and please keep my conversation with fellow Taoist Bai Ying a secret. Rest assured, Brother Han, I'm more than capable of keeping a secret. In any case, it's just a small world, and that's not enough to tempt our dragon race. If our dragon race wanted a small world, we could obtain any number of small worlds at any time we want. I swear on my inner vows that I won't disclose this to anyone. As soon as this voice trailed off, green light flashed from Han Li's wrist, and an elegant figure emerged before everyone. She wore a long green robe and had skin as fair as snow, creating a stark contrast with her long black hair. Her facial features were very beautiful, and she would be completely identical to a human beauty if not for the pair of short green horns sticking out of her hair. This was the true form of Xianxia. The Blood Soul and the others were all given a fright upon seeing this, but judging from Han Li's words, they knew that this wasn't an enemy, so they didn't immediately lash out despite their surprise. Considering how wealthy the dragon race is, I'm sure you wouldn't revoke an inner demon vow over something like this, Han Li replied with a nod, seemingly in full trust of the woman. It was all thanks to you that I was able to escape from the He Lion Trade Guild, and I'll be sure to repay you during the Dao Fruit Convention, Brother Han. I'll be leaving this realm and returning to my race now, Xianxia said with a smile before taking her leave. Han Li naturally wasn't going to try and keep her, and after exchanging some parting words, Xianxia sped away toward a certain direction as a ball of azure light. As for how she was going to leave the spirit realm, that wasn't something for Han Li to be concerned about. Let's go. The distribution map indicates that there seems to be an ancient altar just nearby. Let's take a look at that one first, Han Li said after Xianxia had faded into the distance. Patriarch Hua, she immediately gave an affirmative response, then controlled the puppets piloting the giant ark to change direction slightly before accelerating toward the nearest altar. Fellow Taoist Blood Soul, please come with me to the hall. I have something to discuss with you, Han Li instructed. The Blood Soul wasn't surprised to hear this, and she immediately did as she was told. Moments later, the two of them arrived in the hall, and Han Li took a seat while the Blood Soul remained standing. What are your plans now that we've arrived on the Blood Sky continent, fellow Taoist? Our agreement was that I would protect you if you encountered any powerful enemies, but it'll be up to you to find and recover your true body, Han Li said in a calm manner. I've already decided that I'll be going to Blood Crane City, which was where I previously discovered some leads in the form of a mark left behind by my true body. Unfortunately, I was being pursued by enemies at the time, so I didn't get a chance to thoroughly inspect the nearby area and could only flee back to the Tian Yuan continent. I'm sure that if I were given sufficient time, I'll be able to find more leads, the Blood Soul replied. Blood Crane City. Let me check the location of that city, Han Li said as he flipped a hand over to produce the jade slip containing a map of the continent, then injected his spiritual sense into it. It's quite a distant location. If we don't use any teleportation formations, it'll most likely take half a year to fly to the city. The good thing is that there are many ancient altars along the way, so it won't hamper my progress. However, I'll have to examine all of the nearby ancient altars on the way there, and that will result in some delays, Han Li said. The Blood Soul was ecstatic to hear this, and she hurriedly extended a deep bow as she said, Of course, it's only right that you prioritize what you're doing above my quest. By the way, Blood Crow City is part of the territory of the Blood Dao sect that I made an enemy of, so we'll have to be careful once we get there. Chapter 2345, Blood Bone Sect. Alright, if you have no objections, then you can go and rest now. I hope we can have a smooth trip, Han Li sighed as he waved a hand to dismiss the Blood Soul. The Blood Soul naturally didn't dare to refuse and did as she was told. Meanwhile, Han Li sat in his chair in silence as a contemplative look appeared on his face. Several days later, the giant ark appeared in the air above a green lake, then descended onto a barren-looking small island. Half a day later, the ark rose up into the air again before traveling along a predetermined route. A month later, around a dozen foreign beings split up into the two groups were engaged in a fierce battle above a certain renowned mountain range on the Blood Sky continent. One group had fiery red skin with faint scales visible on their cheeks, while the other group had thick brows and huge eyes with wisps of baleful chi surging around them. Below the two groups was a secluded forest, within which were several spirit medicines that were releasing unique aromas into the breeze. On either side of the spirit medicine sat a crimson-robed elderly man and a gray-robed elderly man. The appearances of these two were similar to those of the two groups of beings locked in battle up above, but their cultivation bases were far superior. The two were locked in a battle of their own, with one of them controlling a flower basket treasure, while the other was wielding a round disc, and they appeared to be evenly matched. It was clear that these two were the leaders of the two groups, and that they were fighting over these rare spirit medicines. All of a sudden, a burst of rumbling rang out in the distance, and a mountainous black arc emerged before flying toward the forest at an astonishing speed. Even before the arc had arrived, an astonishing aura had already been sent sweeping through the air. The two groups of foreign beings battling in the air were only the core formation and nascent soul stages, and they immediately retreated in alarm in the face of this fearsome aura. The two spatial tempering stage elderly down below also hurriedly looked up with alarmed expressions. The black arc quickly sped over the forest like a tornado, causing the two groups of foreign beings to spin rapidly on the spot like spinning tops in an involuntary manner. Immediately thereafter, their bodies were sent flying back for hundreds of feet before they managed to right themselves again. As for the forest down below, a massive trench that was over 100 feet wide had been torn into the ground, as if a giant primordial beast had just crashed its way through the forest, and countless trees had been felled. The two groups could only look on with astonished expressions as the giant black arc vanished on the spot as a gust of black wind close to 10 kilometers away. Even though the two spatial tempering stage beings just so happened to be situated on either side of the trench, they were also forced back in retreat by the suffocating aura that had crashed down from above. After rising to their feet again, both of them had turned completely pale, and they were looking at the giant arc in the distance as if they had seen a ghost. That was a Grand Ascension stage being. Only the arc of a Grand Ascension stage being could be this fearsome, the crimson-robed man murmured to himself. I wonder which Grand Ascension stage being that was. Ah, what about our spirit medicine? A thought suddenly occurred to the gray-robed man, and he hurriedly cast his gaze into the trench before heaving a long sigh of relief. The spirit medicines were completely unscathed, as if by some type of miracle, and it seemed that the owner of the ark had intentionally spared them. The crimson-robed man and gray-robed man exchanged a glance, upon which their battle immediately resumed. As for the two groups of foreign beings above the forest, they took a moment to collect themselves before also engaging in battle again. 3 months later, a giant black arc was hovering in the air above the restricted area of a medium-sized sect. The arc was surrounded by over 1,000 high-grade puppets, which were taking up virtually the entire sky. Below the puppets were close to 10,000 foreign beings wearing the same attire, and regardless of their cultivation base, all of them were rooted to the spot with fearful expressions, not daring to move around as they pleased. Around 2 hours later, spatial fluctuations erupted from within the restricted area, upon which a streak of azure light forced its way through the restrictions before landing on the giant arc to reveal Han Li and Zhu Guo. How did it go, Senior? The Blood Soul hurriedly asked. This isn't the altar we're looking for either. Let's keep going, Han Li instructed. Yes, Master. Patriarch Hua, she immediately pulled out a badge treasure before waving it through the air, upon which all of the puppets in the sky returned silently to the giant arc. In the next instant, countless black runes emerged on the surface of the arc, and it sped away amid a resounding boom. There were several body integration stage beings among the foreign beings down below, and they were greatly relieved to see the departure of the arc. One of them was a burly man with green feelers all over his face, and he said in an indignant manner, "Are we really just going to let them get away like this? If word of this were to spread, the reputation of our sect would be swept to the ground. What do you suggest we do then? Their leader's cultivation base is completely unfathomable to us, so he's most likely a Grand Ascension stage being. Even setting him aside, just those puppets alone would be enough to destroy our entire sect several times over. Do you want us all to chase him down and give our own lives for no reason?" A hunchbacked elderly man harumphed coldly in response, and the others immediately chimed in agreement. We may be no match for them, but can't we get an upper sect to step in? We pay so many spirit stones to the upper sect every year. Aren't we doing that so that they can protect our sect at times like this? As long as the upper sect is willing to step in and teach those people a small lesson, the reputation of our sect would be saved. The burly man disagreed. Even the upper sect possesses only a single Grand Ascension stage being. Do you think they would confront another Grand Ascension stage being over something like this? Besides, he only forced his way into our sect's restricted area, but he hasn't harmed any of our disciples. Aside from the damage to our reputation, our sect hasn't sustained any actual damage. the people of the upper sect definitely wouldn't be willing to step in under these circumstances, the hunchbacked man countered. The burly man disagreed. Not necessarily, as long as we're willing to pay a heavy enough price. That's enough. You want us to go offending a grand ascension stage being just to save some face. Have you gone insane, Elder Zhu? A middle-aged man in a set of scholarly robes suddenly interjected to cut off the burly man. I just don't want the reputation of our sect to be severely impacted by this, sect master. Seeing as none of you seem to care, I'll stay out of this matter as well, the burly man grumbled before falling silent. Elder Fei, Elder Qiang, go and see if any treasures have gone missing in the restricted area, and try to follow the signs to see which parts of the area the Grand Ascension Stage Senior visited, the middle-aged man instructed. The two elders he was referring to immediately gave affirmative responses before flying into the restricted area as streaks of light. As for the other disciples, they were ordered to return to what they had been doing before by the sect master. The ancient altar. Half a day later, the sect master was seated in a secret chamber, appraising the hunchbacked elderly man with a hint of surprise on his face. That's right, that senior seemed to have only visited that one place, and there are some signs suggesting that he attempted some type of divination there, the hunchbacked man replied with a wry smile. The ancient altar in the restricted area has already been abandoned for many years. Why would he come to our sect just to visit the altar? The sect master murmured to himself with a perplexed expression. Who knows, perhaps there's some type of secret hidden within that altar, the hunchbacked elder speculated. So be it, even if there is some type of secret, we can't get involved now that a Grand Ascension Stage being has already visited the altar. From now on, double the number of guards in the restricted area, but aside from that, pretend as if nothing ever happened, the sect master decided. I understand. I'll issue this order tomorrow, the hunchbacked man agreed with a nod. Meanwhile, Han Li was situated in the hall of the giant black ark, appraising a white light screen that was hovering before him. The light screen depicted an extremely clear giant map with annotations of some mountain ranges and lakes, as well as several flashing spots of azure light spread all over the map. Senior Han, we've already visited all of the altars nearby, and the next altar is around half a month's travel away. However, once we reach that altar, we'll be in the territory of the Blood-Bone Sect, which is one of the major Blood Dao sects, the Blood Soul explained as she pointed at one of the flashing azure dots on the light screen. That's the sect that you made an enemy out of, right? It looks like we'll have to be more subdued once we enter that area. I don't fear any other Grand Ascension Stage being, but it would naturally be best to avoid senseless conflict, Han Li said with a nod. The Blood-Bone Sect has 5 or 6 Grand Ascension Stage beings among its ranks, making it one of the most formidable powers on the Blood Sky continent. Even though this number of Grand Ascension Stage beings is far less than that of other major powers, the Blood Dao cultivation arts of this sect are extremely fearsome, and all of its Grand Ascension Stage beings are far more powerful than those of other sects. We'll have to try and avoid attracting their attention, so we won't be able to travel in this arc any longer, the Blood Soul said with a slightly grim expression. Chapter 2346, Masked Man. This arc is indeed a little conspicuous. I'll withdraw it once we enter Blood-Bone Sect territory. Once we arrive at Blood Crow City, you can go to search for leads about your true body on your own. I'll give you 2 body integration stage puppets to accompany you, so you'll be fine as long as you don't encounter any Grand Ascension Stage beings, Han Li said. A hint of elation flashed through the Blood Soul's eyes upon hearing this. Thank you, Senior. I'll be sure to do my best. There's no need to thank me over something so minor, Han Li said as he waved a dismissive hand. Over a month later, Han Li and the others finally arrived in the territory under the Blood-Bone Sect's control. Thus, the Ing Spirit Holy Ark was withdrawn and replaced by an inconspicuous black flying carriage that was drawn by several flying wolf puppets. The next part of the trip progressed quite smoothly, and another 2 months later, Han Li's group arrived at a giant crimson city. The city's construction was very interesting in that there was a blue lake on either side of the city, and the section of the city wall where the city gate was situated jutted out significantly, forming what was almost like an independent small town. Atop the city wall was a group of crimson-armored guards that were patrolling back and forth in an absent-minded manner. A group of foreign beings was lined up outside the city gate, and only after paying some spirit stones to the guards at the gate were they granted access. Blood Crane City is considered to be a major city of the Blood-Bone Sect, and the city produces several types of specialty products that are beneficial to mid-grade and high-grade cultivators. As such, there's an elite force from the blood-bone sect that's constantly situated in the city, as well as a Grand Ascension Stage Grand Elder, so no one dares to cause any trouble here, and it's a very orderly city. However, everything is also a lot more expensive here than it is in other cities, and a sum of spirit stones must be issued if one wishes to permanently settle here, the Blood Soul introduced. We've encountered some blood-bone sect disciples on the way here. Setting aside their cultivation bases, all of them have a type of baleful aura emanating from their bodies, indicating that they are indeed using an extremely formidable cultivation art. It's no wonder the blood-bone sect is one of the major blood Dao sects on the blood sky continent, and is capable of constructing such a massive city. On top of that, this city is situated right in between several mountain ranges, so it must be frequently visited by many outsiders passing through the area. Hanley analyzed as he quickly gleaned the terrain near Blood Crane City with his spiritual sense. Indeed, Senior, assuming things haven't changed too much compared to when I was last here, the majority of the city's population is comprised of foreign cultivators. However, most of the major businesses in the city belong to the blood-bone sect, and others with businesses in the city are also supported by other major powers. There are also some strange individuals who hide within the city all year round, the Blood Soul replied. Sounds like a very complicated place. Does the blood-bone sect not care about those mysterious individuals? Hanley asked. Blood Crow City is considered to be one of the more liberal major cities on the Blood Sky continent. Unless someone starts a fight in the city or does something to impact others, then the blood-bone sect won't do anything aside from taking some spirit stones at set times. It's perhaps because of this that the city has always been thriving. On top of that, there are several large arenas in the city, and those who wish to settle their differences could do so by engaging in a battle for superiority or even battles of the death in those arenas, the Blood Soul replied. I see, I think I have a general understanding of what type of city this is now. Are you planning to enter the city with me, fellow Taoist? Hanley asked. I won't be going in, Senior. According to the mark left behind by my true body, she appeared to have entered the myriad Moon Mountain range neighboring the city, so I'm planning to go there to search for other leads, the Blood Soul replied as she extended a slight bow. In that case, you can go on your own. There are 2 ancient altars near the city, so I'll always be nearby. Take this transmission talisman with you and contact me with it if you discover something or encounter any trouble. Hanley flipped a hand over as he spoke to summon a golden talisman before tossing it toward the Blood Soul. Thank you, Senior. I feel much more assured now with this talisman in my possession, the Blood Soul hurriedly replied in a grateful manner as she caught the talisman. She then extended a parting bow toward Hanley before departing as a streak of light. Only after the Blood Soul had completely disappeared into the distance did Hanley spur on the flying carriage to fly directly toward the giant city. There were already 7 or 8 foreign beings lined up outside the city. They were all asked some simple questions by the guards, such as where they came from and how long they were planning to stay in Blood Crane City. The foreign beings all provided answers to these questions, but as for whether they were being honest or not, that was something that only the heavens knew. The guards outside the city gate didn't care about that anyway, and they made some records of this information before handing out a metal badge to each person and granting them access. Once it was Hanley's turn, Patriarch she stepped forward before releasing a portion of his body integration stage aura, then tossed a mid-grade spirit stone toward the guards as he said, 3 people, keep the change. Among the dozen or so guards in front of the city gate, the most powerful one was only at the nascent soul, and they were all forced to stumble back a few steps in the face of Patriarch she's formidable aura, as stunned looks appeared on their faces. The leader of the guards accepted the mid-grade spirit stone before immediately handing 3 badges to Hanley's trio, not daring to ask any questions. Thus, Hanley's trio made their way into the city in a nonchalant manner. With such a powerful aura, that had to have been a body integration stage senior. How strange! There's been over 30 body integration stage beings who have arrived at our city in just this 1 month alone, the leader of the guards said as he wiped away the cold sweat on his forehead after Hanley's trio had disappeared into the distance. That is indeed quite strange. On top of that, none of these body integration stage beings are leaving the city. Could it be that something is about to happen? Another guard speculated. Perhaps. Do you guys feel like there are many new faces that have appeared among our superiors during the past month? All of them are extremely arrogant, and they seem to be important figures. I don't think they're inner sect disciples, another guard mumbled. A stern look appeared on the guard leader's face, and he scolded, "All right, let's end this discussion here. Regardless of what happens in the city, it has nothing to do with outer sect disciples like us. All we have to worry about is looking after this city gate. Have you forgotten the rules of our sect?" The other guards immediately shuddered at the mention of the rules of the sect, and they immediately fell silent, not daring to discuss this topic any further. At this point, Han Li and the others had already made their way into the protruding area of the city wall beyond the city gate. Aside from a series of long streets that were lined with crude stalls, there were no other buildings in this area. Many of the people who had just entered the city were lingering in front of the stalls, examining the items being sold or bartering with the stall owners. Han Li swept his spiritual sense over the stalls to find that even though the items being sold were quite diverse or plentiful, they were all of a low caliber and were useless for beings like him and Patriarch Xianxia. Thus, they naturally weren't going to linger here and quickly exited the area, upon which they arrived at a massive plaza with an area in excess of 10,000 acres. Many official shops of different sizes were spread all around the plaza, and judging from the signs hanging outside the shops, it was clear that everything could be purchased here, including materials, spirit beasts, treasures, etc. Patriarch Xianxia and Zhu Gyuor's eyes lit up in unison upon seeing this. "You can roam the city freely for the next few days, but come back here in 3 days to meet up with me again," Han Li instructed with a faint smile. During this past half a year, they hadn't entered any other cities as they had been busy traveling and searching for ancient altars. They were on a different continent, so the shops here were definitely selling rare materials, ingredients and treasures that weren't commonly available on the Tianyuan continent. As such, it was necessary to give them some time to buy the things that they wanted. "Yes, Master Han." "Thank you, Senior Han." Patriarch Xianxia and Zhu Gyuor were ecstatic to hear this, and they extended respectful bows toward Han Li before hurrying over to the shops around the plaza. 3 days wouldn't be enough for them to visit all of the shops, but it would suffice for exploring most of these shops. Right at this moment, Han Li suddenly seemed to have sensed something, and he reflexively raised his head to look up into the sky. Night was about to fall upon the city, and through the invisible restrictions, he was able to see several murky crescent moons in the sky, while a bright red color was beginning to appear in the nearby space. It wouldn't take long before the crimson night was going to settle over the entire sky. For some reason, the Blood Sky continent was no different from the other 2 continents during the day, but at night, it would turn a strange crimson color, and that was the origin of the continent's name. However, Han Li wasn't looking at the moons that were already beginning to take on a red tinge. Instead, he was looking at a certain spot above the plaza, and moments later, he lowered his head again in an expressionless manner before making his way toward a street that was connected to the plaza. Within the patch of space that Han Li had just been appraising was a completely concealed masked man, and his brows furrowed tightly as he murmured to himself, "That Grand Ascension stage being has noticed me as well. Who is he? I've never seen that face before." Chapter 2347, Taoist Qing Ping and Mistress Wan Hua. Regardless of who he is, now that a Grand Ascension stage being has appeared, it looks like we won't be able to hide this any longer. We may as well spread the word and recruit their assistants to make a gamble. Surely that would be better than missing our opportunity and ending up with nothing. Having made up his mind, the masked man swept a sleeve through the air and instantly vanished on the spot. At this moment, Han Li was walking along a street, having visited a few of the larger shops to replenish his supplies. After that, he went to a slightly secluded inn and rented a small independent courtyard, where he stayed and began to meditate. 3 days later, Han Li returned to the plaza, where Patriarch Xianxia and Zhu Gyuor were already waiting for him, and the 3 returned to the inn together. Han Li then informed the 2 of them that he had suddenly made a breakthrough in a secret technique, so he would have to go into seclusion for some time and set the search for the ancient altar aside for now. He also instructed the 2 to stay in the courtyard and cultivate in the meantime, and to not go out unless it was necessary. Patriarch Xianxia and Zhu Gyuor naturally accepted this arrangement. Thus, for the next month or so, the 3 of them cultivated in the courtyard without leaving even once. On this day, Han Li was in the process of meditating when he suddenly opened his eyes, seemingly having sensed something. His expression then darkened slightly as golden light erupted from his body, and he shot out of the room as a streak of golden light. Almost at the exact same moment, an earth-shattering boom rang out, and a massive fireball exploded above the inn akin to a scorching sun. Powerful shockwaves surged forth in all directions, toppling all of the surrounding buildings, and the majority of the people near the site of the explosion instantly exploded into clouds of blood mist, while only a minority of beings with advanced cultivation bases were able to rush out of the affected area before looking up with alarmed expressions. Patriarch Huashi and Zhugyur were naturally among the latter group. Due to the flight restrictions, no one was able to rise up into the air, but they could still see everything clearly from down below. At the site of the explosion, there were two humanoid figures facing each from afar, while hovering in midair. One of them was a young man in a set of Taoist robes, while the other was a wrinkly old woman with a head of white hair, and both of them were giving off astonishing auras. Letter 1D5F3, letter 1D42B, letter 1D6AT, letter 1D5F2, letter 1D6A0, letter 1D6AT. Letter 1D5F0, letter 1D5FC, letter 1D5FA. It was clear that those were responsible for the explosion. Those must be Grand Ascension stage beings. Even body integration stage beings can't rise too high up into the air with the potent flight restrictions in place in this city, someone immediately exclaimed. Some of the people who had survived the explosion were looking up with enraged expressions, but all of them drew a sharp breath upon hearing this before quickly scattering and fleeing into the distance. This was a clash between two Grand Ascension stage beings. It would be nothing short of suicide to stay here. As for seeking an explanation or compensation, that was something that they didn't even dare to consider. The fact that two Grand Ascension stage beings had suddenly appeared was enough to shake the entire city. Patriarch Huashi and Zhugyur were a little perplexed as they couldn't see Han Li anywhere, but they weren't concerned and remained standing calmly on the spot. Right at this moment, a cold male voice suddenly rang out up above. "How dare you attack this city in such a blatant manner? Do you have no regard for the blood-bone sect?" Faint spatial fluctuations erupted, and a burst of white light suddenly flashed between the young man and the elderly woman, following which a man wearing a white mask emerged. The mask had several silver spirit patterns etched onto its surface, and it concealed the man's entire face aside from a pair of black eyes. "You've finally come out, Xiao Ming. This is what you get for avoiding us. HMPH, if you had continued to hide from us, I would have destroyed this entire city," the elderly woman harumphed coldly. "Please forgive us, fellow Taoist Xiao. Mistress Wan Hua and I only resorted to this as we had no choice. It's a good thing that we intentionally restricted the scope of the explosion, so not much damage was caused to your city," the young Taoist priest said in an apologetic manner, creating a stark contrast with the elderly woman's cold demeanor. Not much damage was caused. There were close to 1,000 people living in this area, yet less than 100 managed to escape. Most importantly, during the few centuries I've been the lord of this city, no one has dared to do something like this. I'm not going to let things slide unless you give me a satisfactory explanation," the masked man replied in a cold voice. "What explanation do you want? So what if a few hundred low-grade beings died? It's not a big deal. Are you trying to issue a challenge to me?" the elderly woman asked as a dangerous gleam flashed through her eyes. The young Taoist priest's brows furrowed slightly upon hearing this, but he didn't say anything in the end. "I know why you two came to find me, but if you want to discuss this matter, you and Mistress Wan Hua will each have to endure 3 attacks from me at an arena. Regardless of the outcome, I'll be willing to let things slide," the masked man said. "3 attacks? No problem. I can take 30, even 300 if you want," the elderly woman guffawed. "Good, I'll be able to give everyone in the city an explanation now. By the way, there's something I forgot to mention. You two aren't the first Grand Ascension stage fellow Taoists to arrive at my Blood Crane City," the masked man said. Both the elderly woman and young Taoist priest were quite surprised to hear this, and the latter asked, "Someone arrived here before us. Which fellow Taoist was it that managed to catch wind of this so quickly?" Instead of providing a reply, the masked man turned toward a certain direction and said, "You've been spectating for quite some time now, fellow Taoist. Why don't you come out and meet us?" "Oh, I didn't think you'd be able to see through my concealment technique. In that case, I guess I'll have to show myself." A male voice suddenly rang out from that direction, following which Han Li emerged amid a flash of azure light with a hint of a smile on his face. "So it really is you. Don't be surprised that I was able to see through your concealment technique. Most of the restrictions in this city were set up by me, so anyone else unleashing abilities of this nature would also fail to escape my detection, Xiao Ming said with a smile. So you're a formation master. No wonder you were able to see right through me. May I ask why you decided to call me out? Han Li asked. I must say, I truly admire your willpower, fellow Taoist. You clearly already know that that thing is about to open, but instead of seeking me out after arriving in Blood Crane City, you've made no effort to approach me at all. If fellow Taoist Qing Ping and fellow Taoist Wan Hua hadn't arrived, you would have most likely continued to wait. I also didn't think that the two of them would decide to strike on the street where you're living. Life is truly full of coincidences, Xiao Ming chuckled. The Taoist priest exchanged a glance with the elderly woman before the former said, with a smile, fellow Taoist Wan Hua, and I were unaware that a fellow Taoist of the same cultivation base as ourselves was living on this street. We had briefly inspected the area with our spiritual sense and decided to strike, as the population density in this area was quite low. Having said that, it's very impressive that you were able to conceal your cultivation base so convincingly that you even managed to fool both of us. I don't recall ever seeing you before. May I ask your name, fellow Taoist? My surname is Han, and it's no surprise that you haven't seen me before. I'm not from the Blood Sky continent. I just so happen to be passing through this place, and I have no interest in getting involved with whatever you're planning. However, if I hadn't acted quickly, I would have been caught up in that explosion as well, so I believe you two also owe me an explanation, Han Li replied with a cold expression. Xiao Ming faltered slightly upon hearing this, then turned to Taoist Qing Ping's duo with an amused look in his eyes. Taoist Qing Ping's brows furrowed slightly as he appraised Han Li, as if he were trying to figure out whether Han Li was telling the truth. His smile then faded as he replied, so you're a fellow Taoist from another continent. We were indeed a little rash with our prior actions, but what kind of explanation do you want from us? Do you want us to face 3 attacks from you as well? There's no need for 3 attacks. The two of you can take 1 attack from me each, Han Li replied in an expressionless manner. The elderly woman seemed to be very short-tempered, and she immediately flared up with rage upon hearing this. Sure, 1 attack each it is. Let me see what gives you the confidence to be so arrogant. A wry smile appeared on Taoist Qing Ping's face, and he asked, are you really just passing through this city and not pursuing the same thing as we are? I don't even know what you're referring to. How could I possibly be pursuing it? Rest assured, fellow Taoists, I have other important matters to attend to. As long as you don't get in my way, I won't pose any hindrance to you either, Han Li said in a calm manner. Taoist Qing Ping was ecstatic to hear this, and Mistress Wan Hua's expression also eased slightly. As for Xiao Ming, his expression remained calm as he said, regardless of what your objective is, as the city lord, I must welcome you to our city. I hope you can all do me the honor of paying my cave abode a visit once we finish our sparring matches in the arena. Chapter 2348, Nine-Eyed Blood Toad. The two of us came to see you, so we were planning to stay at your cave abode for a few days even if you hadn't offered, Taoist Qing Ping replied with a smile. Han Li also nodded in agreement after a brief moment of contemplation. Xiao Ming was quite pleased to hear this, and he looked around at the city guards that had already begun to gather from all directions, then said, all right, then it's decided. Let's go to the nearest arena first. I'll get the disciples of our sect to take care of everything else here. Taoist Qing Ping and Mistress Wan Hua naturally had no objections to this, and Han Li followed them toward a certain part of the city after briefly communicating to Patriarch Hua Shi and Zhu Gyur through voice transmission. Zhu Gyur and Patriarch Hua Shi exchanged a glance before silently departing, quickly vanishing into a nearby street. Around an hour later, Xiao Ming and Mistress Wan Hua were facing each other from afar in midair within a white light barrier that was situated in a massive ring-shaped building. Meanwhile, Han Li and Taoist Qing Ping were looking on calmly from the spectator stands outside the light barrier. Moments later, Xiao Ming declared that he was unleashing his first attack, following which he opened his mouth to release a streak of crimson light, which instantly transformed into a massive white bone blade. There were several silver rings embedded into the front tip of the blade, and they were clanging incessantly as they swayed in the wind. Xiao Ming grabbed a hold of the blade before swinging it viciously through the air, hurling it directly toward his opponent. As soon as the bone blade left his grasp, countless crimson runes appeared on its surface. It covered a distance of several thousand feet in the blink of an eye, reaching Mistress Wan Hua in a flash. HMPH, is that all you've got? Mistress Wanhua harumphed coldly as she put on a disdainful display, but she didn't dare to allow any complacency to set in as she swept a hand upward like lightning. An antiquated-looking black wooden hairpin was pulled out of thin air before being slashed toward the bone blade from afar. A clear ringing sound rang out, and a burst of black flames erupted out of the pointed tip of the hairpin, then wound itself around the bone blade before radiating dazzling light. The black flames only revolved several times around the bone blade before the latter was forced to a halt, then began to gradually melt away. Xiao Ming wasn't surprised at all to see this, and he declared, "This is my second attack." He then pointed a finger at the bone blade, close to half of which had already melted away, and the silver rings embedded onto its surface shuddered slightly before flying out of the black flames, having been completely unaffected. In the next instant, the silver rings vanished on the spot, and Mistress Wanhua's expression suddenly changed drastically as she twisted around before rising up into the air as a streak of azure light. Spatial fluctuations erupted from the spot where she had been standing before, and several silver rings of light emerged before shrinking toward the center. However, they naturally missed their target due to the preemptive measures taken by Mistress Wanhua. Xiao Ming remained unfazed by this as he continued to chant an incantation, while pointing incessantly at the rings of light. Countless arcs of silver lightning erupted from the smooth surfaces of the rings amid a rumbling boom, then surged directly toward Mistress Wanhua. Mistress Wanhua's expression darkened slightly upon seeing this, and she swept her wooden hairpin downward several times in succession, releasing more bursts of black flames. However, the black flames were unable to do anything aside from slow down the rings of light slightly. Mistress Wanhua flashing through the air over and over again, but the rings of light were also capable of instantaneous teleportation and were chasing her in hot pursuit. After evading a few more times, an impatient look finally appeared on Mistress Wanhua's face. "Do you really think these rings can suppress my devilish flames? Let me show you the true power of my bone-eroding devilish flames." As soon as her voice trailed off, she hurled her wooden hairpin through the air before expelling a ball of energy onto it out of her mouth. At the same time, a giant black lion projection that was over 100 feet tall peered behind her amid a flash of black light. The lion's body was covered in scorching black flames, and it was giving off an astonishing aura. Right at this moment, the wooden hairpin suddenly transformed into a short black sword. The sword was only around half a foot in length, but it was giving off incredible heat that was threatening to set even the nearby space alight. Taking advantage of this opportunity, the rings of light reappeared above Mistress Wanhua before converging viciously toward her again. The giant black lion let loose a low roar as it raised its head to expel a black fiery cloud out of its mouth, keeping the rings of light at bay. Meanwhile, Mistress Wanhua cast an incantation seal into the short sword, and it flew into the black lion's mouth as a streak of black light. A cold smile then appeared on her face as she rapidly flicked a string of incantation seals through the air, and the black flames around the lion's body swelled drastically as it opened its mouth to expel a burst of black light. The black light was none other than the short sword, but its surface was now riddled with peculiar flame-shaped spirit patterns. The short sword pierced through the fiery cloud as a streak of light that was over 100 feet in length, then flashed right past the rings of light. Several dull thumps rang out, and the rings of light were all slashed apart before disintegrating into specks of spiritual light. As opposed to being alarmed to see this, a hint of elation flashed through Xiao Ming's eyes instead. "Impressive. That must be your signature treasure, the kill-and-slaying devilish sword. As expected, it truly is a fearsome weapon. Even my Mount Tai rings were unable to withstand it. However, I'm going to be using some of my true power in this final attack, so take care, fellow Taoist." He then suddenly slammed a palm viciously into his own dantian. A dull thump rang out as countless streaks of crimson chi surged out of his body, instantly forming a dense cloud of mist that completely inundated him. Mistress Wanhua's heart jolted slightly upon seeing this, and a serious look appeared on her face as she injected even more power into her black lion projection, further bolstering its aura and increasing its size by around a third. A sharp screech suddenly rang out from within the crimson mist, followed by the sound of heavy footsteps, as if some type of giant creature were about to emerge. The mist then completely parted to reveal a mountainous toad. The toad was over 1,000 feet tall with a glossy crimson body, and there were several head-sized bulges on its back. There were also 9 shimmering golden demonic eyes on its head that were flashing with an unsettling light. That's a nine-eyed blood toad. I didn't think you would truly refine the true blood of this true spirit being, Mistress Wan Hua exclaimed as her expression darkened significantly. Taoist Qing Ping's expression also changed slightly upon hearing this. In contrast, Han Li's eyes abruptly lit up, and a hint of a smile appeared on his face. He had naturally heard of the nine-eyed blood toad, and some of its true blood was even occasionally sold in some large auctions. However, in contrast with the blood of other true spirit beings, which would always attract fierce bidding from high-grade beings, this blood was rarely sought after, and there were even instances where it had gone unsold. This was because the blood of the nine-eyed blood toad was extremely poisonous, and even the majority of Grand Ascension stage beings wouldn't be able to handle the backlash from the poison within the blood during the refinement process. As for beings of lower cultivation bases, they would instantly perish upon even the slightest contact with this true blood. Thus, with so many other types of true spirit blood to choose from, there were naturally very few Grand Ascension stage beings interested in the blood of this creature. As such, it was very remarkable that this Xiao Ming had dared to take this risk, and had actually succeeded in refining this true blood. This is the first time I've ever used this form in battle, so you'll be the first person to experience its power, fellow Taoist Wan Hua. Xiao Ming's cold voice rang out, following which the giant toad suddenly opened its mouth before something shot out at an incredible speed. Mistress Wan Hua immediately gave a muffled groan as shuddered violently before stumbling back a few steps, seemingly having just been struck by some type of powerful object. Around 10 feet in front of her, there was a head-sized ball of golden flesh viciously striking a vibrant green wooden shield. Behind this ball of flesh was a crimson pillar of flesh that was around as thick as a human wrist, without countless bulging veins on its surface. This was the nine-eyed blood toad's tongue, and it had struck Mistress Wan Hua before she had even managed to catch sight of it. If it weren't for the fact that she had summoned the wooden shield as a prophylactic measure, she would have most likely been unable to withstand that attack. Even as things currently were, she had clearly been forced onto the back foot. Mistress Wan Hua let loose an enraged cry as the giant black lion behind her opened its mouth, to release a streak of black light that hurtled directly toward the toad's tongue. However, right at this moment, the thick toad's tongue abruptly vanished on the spot. At the same time, the nine-eyed blood toad that was situated several thousand feet away suddenly sprang up using its hind limbs, then also disappeared into thin air. Mistress Wan Hua was a seasoned combatant at this point in her cultivation journey, and she immediately knew that she was in trouble. Her expression changed drastically as she twisted around to flee, but it was already too late. A loud rumbling boom suddenly rang out up above, and the nine-eyed blood toad suddenly reappeared above her. As soon as it emerged, it reached out with a massive palm, conjuring up a crimson halo with a diameter of around 100 feet that came crashing down viciously from above. Even before the halo had completely descended, the space around Mistress Wan Hua tightened, and she felt her own body become extremely heavy, following which countless rumbling booms rang out. Chapter 2349, Formation. Mistress Wan Hua was quite alarmed to see this, and she immediately raised her head before opening her mouth to release a huge, earthy yellow seal. At the same time, the giant black lion behind her raised one of its paws before slashing its claws upward amid a sharp tearing sound. 5 massive claw projections were unleashed, but as soon as they came into contact with the crimson halo, they were instantly repelled amid a dull thump. As for the giant seal, it was affected by the fearsome power being released by the halo, causing it to go out of control as it began to revolve aimlessly in midair. As for the crimson halo itself, it didn't pause even in the slightest as it continued to descend toward Mistress Wan Hua. Mistress Wan Hua's expression darkened even further upon seeing this, and she suddenly uttered a few strange sounds, following which the black lion behind her immediately released a black fireball amid a furious roar. As soon as the fireball emerged, it swelled to a size that was no smaller than the crimson halo before surging up toward it. A rumbling boom rang out as the fireball transformed into a cloud of scorching flames that swept forth in all directions, unleashing such incredible power that even the crimson halo was beginning to flash erratically. However, right at this moment, the nine-eyed blood toad up above opened its mouth to expel a ball of crimson chi, which vanished into the halo in a flash. In the next instant, a loud buzzing sound rang out, and the halo tremored slightly before being restabilized by the new influx of energy, upon which it continued to forcibly descend through the fiery cloud. The giant black lion was also releasing black flames out of its mouth to support the fiery cloud, but the crimson halo was clearly not something that it could resist. Mistress Xianxia was very alarmed to see this, and as the halo drew closer and closer, she was beginning to consider using her trump cards. However, right at this moment, the crimson halo abruptly vanished on the spot. "Thank you for the battle," the nine-eyed blood toad said in a calm manner, then reverted back into its human form amid a burst of crimson mist. "Your powers are very formidable, Brother Zio. I concede this match," Mistress Xianxia said in an indignant manner as she withdrew the fiery cloud and black lion projection with a dark expression. "I was only able to seize the initiative due to my nine-eyed blood toad transformation. I may not necessarily be able to defeat you in a battle of life and death. It's your turn now, fellow Taoist Han. I'm looking forward to seeing your abilities from another continent," Zio Ming said. He then flew out of the light barrier as a ball of crimson light before descending near Han Li. "Would you like to take a rest first, fellow Taoist Xianxia? How about I spar with fellow Taoist Qing Ping first?" Han Li asked with a faint smile. "There's no need for that. I didn't expend much magic power during that clash, so I'm ready to face you right away," Mistress Xianxia replied in a cold voice before Taoist Qing Ming could respond. Taoist Qing Ming merely offered a faint smile in silence. Han Li's brows furrowed slightly upon seeing this, but he still accepted this arrangement. He made a hand seal, and his body blurred before vanishing on the spot, then re-emerged within the light barrier amid a burst of spatial fluctuations. "I'll only be unleashing a single attack, so I won't be holding back much here," Han Li cautioned in an expressionless manner. "HMPH, I'm well aware of that," Mistress Xianxia snapped in response, following which the giant black lion reappeared behind her amid a flash of black light, and it seemed to be even more menacing than before. It was clear that she was quite enraged by her loss in the previous sparring match, and that she intended to recover some dignity by defeating Han Li. Han Li's eyes narrowed slightly upon seeing this, and he took a deep breath before taking a step forward. A dull thump rang out as if he had taken an incredibly heavy step, and in the instant his foot landed on the ground, a resounding boom rumbled throughout the entire arena. Mistress Xianxia's heart jolted slightly upon seeing this, and she was then greeted by the sight of countless silver spirit patterns appearing all over Han Li's body. At the same time, he swelled drastically in size, while a layer of golden scales surfaced over his skin amid a flash of bright golden light. In the blink of an eye, he had transformed into a golden-scaled devilish being with a single horn on its head. Taoist Qing Ming's expression changed drastically upon hearing this, and he hurriedly cautioned, "That's the true devil physique that can only be attained by cultivating devil Dao arts to the extreme. Be on your guard, fellow Taoist Xianxia." It was impossible to glean Zio Ming's expression due to his mask, but there was clearly a hint of astonishment in his eyes as well. Mistress Xianxia faltered slightly upon hearing this, and a grim look appeared on her face as she sensed the fearsome aura that Han Li was releasing. She immediately swept both sleeves through the air to release countless black flying needles, all of which revolved through the air before forming a formation diagram that was releasing bursts of black chi. This flying needle formation diagram was her trump card, and it formed a protective barrier around her from all sides. This formation was comprised of 360 black blood needles, which had taken her several centuries to refine using a refinement method that she had stumbled upon in a set of ancient ruins. She had never been defeated in battle against another grand ascension stage being when using this formation diagram, and even if she couldn't defeat an enemy, the formation diagram would always ensure that she wouldn't lose. The fact that she had summoned this formation diagram without any hesitation was a clear indication of how wary she was of Han Li's true devil physique. True devil physique, Han Li chuckled internally upon hearing this. In reality, this was an incomplete form of his provenance true devil physique. It did indeed have a very similar appearance to a true devil physique that could be attained from several types of rare devilish arts, but the power disparity was night and day. Setting aside the fact that Han Li's physical body was already comparable in power to that of the average true spirit being, even without unleashing his 12 awakening transformations, this incomplete provenance true devil physique would be more than enough to crush normal grand ascension stage beings. With that in mind, Han Li took a few steps forward to reach the formation diagram, then slowly reached out toward the center of the formation with a massive scaled hand. His fingers abruptly vanished into the space before him in a flash, following which a shimmering golden hand that was several times larger than it had been before re-emerged above the formation amid a burst of violent fluctuations. It was as if the massive hand had torn through space, and its fingers parted as it descended toward the formation diagram with a devastating aura. The grim look on Mistress Wan Hua's face became even more pronounced upon seeing this, but she didn't hesitate in the slightest as she made a hand seal, upon which all of the black chi within the formation diagram surged up into the air as countless streaks of black light. Each streak of black light was formed by a needle, and their tips were looking extremely sharp and lethal. However, the giant golden palm displayed no intention of evading, and it continued to descend from above. Thus, all of the streaks of black light struck the golden hand like a torrential storm. A string of crisp clangs rang out, and countless balls of black light erupted over the surface of the giant golden hand, following which all of the black needles were repelled, while the golden palm remained completely unscathed. Mistress Wan Hua wasn't too surprised to see this, and she took a deep breath before making a hand seal, upon which she suddenly began to rotate on the spot like a spinning top. Countless incantation seals of different colors surged out of her body in a frenzy, then vanished into the formation diagram without a trace. Letter 1D4 BB, letter 1D6 33, letter 212F, letter 212F, letter 1D4 64, letter 212F, letter 1D4 B7, letter 1D4 50, letter 2134, letter 1D4 5A. Black chi surged violently within the entire formation, and around a dozen black chains suddenly shot forth before instantly binding tightly around the giant golden hand up above. Immediately thereafter, a faint buzzing sound rang out, and countless black runes surged out of the chains before adhering themselves to the massive palm. "Seal!" Mistress Wan Hua yelled with a triumphant expression as she finally ceased in her rotation. The black runes immediately began to glow brightly while writing incessantly, seemingly preparing to completely seal the giant hand. However, right at this moment, Han Li uttered the word shatter, and countless arcs of golden lightning suddenly sprang out of the black runes, shattering all of the runes to free the massive golden hand. In the instant that the golden palm was freed, it flipped itself over to grab onto all of the golden chains, then crushed them into powder with ease amid a string of dull thumps. The giant golden hand, then blurred before abruptly appeared no more than several tens of feet away from the formation diagram, then came crashing down with devastating force. The black formation diagram began to emit a sharp screeching sound, as if it were being placed under immense pressure, and the black chi within it immediately rose upward to form a black light barrier over the entire formation. An earth-shattering boom rang out as the giant golden palm struck the black light barrier, resulting in an eruption of scintillating black and golden light that forced even Xiao Ming and Taoist Qing Ping to narrow their eyes slightly. Once the light faded and they reopened their eyes, they discovered that the black light barrier had been completely shattered, while the mountainous golden palm had drawn to a halt right above Mistress Wan Hua's head. Chapter 2350, Heavenly Cauldron Palace. Mistress Wan Hua was as pale as a sheet as she stood rooted to the spot down below. Not only had the entire formation diagram been completely wrecked by the giant golden hand, even the massive black lion behind her had curled up into the ball, having been completely immobilized by the tremendous force weighing down from above. She had already summoned several defensive treasures to protect herself, but judging from the fearsome power displayed by the giant palm, she knew that those treasures wouldn't be able to do much at all. She had been forced to use all of her trump cards, yet she had still been crushed by just a single palm from her opponent. This was an extremely heavy psychological blow to someone as proud as she was. "Thank you for the battle," Han Li said before withdrawing his arm. At the same time, the giant golden palm above Mistress Wan Hua also vanished in a flash. Before she knew it, she was on the other side of the light barrier, returning to the spectator stands with a wooden expression. Taoist Qing Ping and Xiao Ming exchanged a glance, and both of them could see their own astonishment mirrored in one another's eyes. Han Li turned to Taoist Qing Ping from within the light barrier and said, "It's your turn now, fellow Taoist Qing Ping." Taoist Qing Ping immediately returned to his senses upon hearing this, and he hurriedly waved his hands with a wry smile as he replied, "I'm no match for you, fellow Taoist. There's no need for me to test myself against you. I concede." He had made a very wise decision and conceded the match. Han Li wasn't too surprised to hear this, and he didn't force the issue any further either. He merely nodded in response before withdrawing his provenance true devil physique, then also emerged from the light barrier. Your powers far exceed those of anyone I've ever seen, fellow Taoist Han. That reminds me, are you the fellow Taoist Han Li of the Tian Yuan continent who entered the Elder Devil realm and slew the Stembora Queen? Xiao Ming asked. Those rumors paint me in a far too flattering light, but I am indeed Han Li replied. Haha, so it really is you. No wonder your powers are so formidable. It seems that a truly esteemed guest has arrived in my city. You have to stay in the city for some time so we can exchange some insights and ideas, Xiao Ming said with an enthusiastic smile, completely disregarding the other two Grand Ascension stage beings present. Han Li was also rather interested in the blood Dao cultivation arts of the blood-bone sect, so he smiled and replied, I certainly can't turn down such a genuine invitation. Great, Mistress Wan Hua, fellow Taoist Qing Ping, let's go to my cave abode together, Xiao Ming said in an excited manner. Taoist Qing Ping and Mistress Wan Hua exchanged a slightly hesitant glance before the former replied, We came here to see you anyway, so we would have visited you even without an invitation. Please lead the way and pardon our intrusion, Brother Xiao. I've already instructed my servants to prepare a banquet in my cave abode that I'm sure you'll all be happy with. Please follow me, fellow Taoists, Xiao Ming said with a smile. Thus, the group departed from the arena as four streaks of light, flying toward a giant palace situated at the center of Blood Crane City. Close to a day later, Han Li flew out of the palace just as night was arriving. It then took him close to an hour to arrive at an inn on a secluded street, before making his way into a courtyard that had already been rented. Patriarch Huashi and Zhu Gyur were standing outside the entrance to the courtyard in a respectful manner, and they immediately extended deep bows upon Han Li's arrival. Han Li waved a dismissive hand toward them before the trio strode into the courtyard together, following which the gates swung shut amid a flash of white light. Meanwhile, Xiao Ming, Mistress Wan Hua, and Taoist Qing Ping were seated around a white jade table in the palace, and there seemed to be an argument taking place. It was impossible to glean Xiao Ming's expression due to his mask, but both Taoist Qing Ping and Mistress Wan Hua wore cold expressions that were even intermingled with a hint of anger. That's going too far, fellow Taoist Xiao. You're planning to take 90% of the spoils from the Heavenly Cauldron Palace and leave only 10 to us. Have you no respect for us at all? Mistress Wan Hua yelled. If you two also possess the key to the Heavenly Cauldron Palace and know its rough location prior to its opening, then you'll also have the right to propose such conditions, Xiao Ming replied in a calm manner. We're naturally aware that you possess those things. Otherwise, we wouldn't have come to find you prior to entering the Myriad Moon Mountain range. However, no matter how you look at it, 10% is far too little, Taoist Qing Ping said with tightly furrowed brows. Xiao Ming refused to be swayed. What kind of place do you think the Heavenly Cauldron Palace is? Without my key, you wouldn't be able to access the palace even if you learned its location in advance. I had to expend an extremely heavenly price to obtain this key, and I'm already being very generous by offering you 10% of the treasures. HMPH, there's more than one key to enter the Heavenly Cauldron Palace. You only have a single key, and we still don't know if it's a genuine one or not. Last time the Heavenly Cauldron Palace appeared, many replica keys were created. Those replica keys couldn't allow one to safely enter the palace, but they can certainly notify one of the opening time and rough location of the palace, so we can try to enter the palace ourselves as long as we're willing to take a risk, Mistress Wan Hua said in a cold voice. Replica keys. I have heard of such things, but I can assure you that I definitely have an authentic key. Otherwise, I wouldn't dare to propose these conditions, Xiao Ming replied in a confident manner. I can see that you're very confident, so I'll take your word for it, but with so many replica keys in existence, there will most likely be many other Grand Ascension stage beings who will try their luck at entering the Heavenly Cauldron Palace. After all, this is a cave abode left behind by Taoist Tianding, who endured the most major heavenly tribulations 1,000,000 years ago, and was even able to successfully ascend in the end. Who knows how many treasures and pills that will be extremely useful to us can be found in the palace. At the very least, the cultivation arts and secret techniques left behind in the palace will tell us how Taoist Tianding was able to transcend all of his major heavenly tribulations, and just that alone would be extremely tempting to all powerful beings of our caliber. Even if you manage to enter the palace, do you think you'll be able to obtain all the treasures in there and leave safely without our assistance? Are you not afraid that we'll collaborate with someone else in possession of a key and compete against you for those treasures? Taoist Qing Ping said as his eyes narrowed slightly. Are you threatening me, fellow Taoist Qing Ping? Xiao Ming's voice immediately cooled upon hearing this. It's not a threat, it's simply the truth. The fact that we've come here is an indication of our sincerity to collaborate with you. Besides, if you don't collaborate with us, who else will you turn to? That fellow Taoist hand from the Tian Yuan continent is extremely powerful. Why didn't you invite him to enter the Heavenly Cauldron Palace with you? Could it be that even you're wary of his powers? Taoist Qing Ping asked in a calm manner. That's right, I am indeed wary of him. I'm not confident in my ability to suppress him, so I didn't tell him about the Heavenly Cauldron Palace. However, you won't convince me to make a concession with just this point alone, Xiao Ming replied without any hesitation. Taoist Qing Ping's expression darkened slightly upon hearing this. Fellow Taoist Qing Ping, seeing as fellow Taoist Xiao is being so stubborn, why don't we tell him? I'm sure he'll be willing to make a concession once he hears what we have to say, Mistress Wan Hua suddenly said in a cold voice. Xiao Ming faltered slightly upon hearing this before asking, "What do you have to tell me?" A mysterious look appeared in Mistress Wan Hua's eyes as she asked, "Do you know fellow Taoist Qing Ping's true origins?" Xiao Ming turned to Taoist Qing Ping with a puzzled look upon hearing this. "Truth be told, my true inheritance comes from." Taoist Qing Ping completed his sentence silently through voice transmission. Xiao Ming's eyes immediately lit up with elation after hearing what he had to say. An extremely deep canyon in the Myriad Moon mountain range, the Blood Soul was standing atop a giant black falcon puppet, staring intently at a burst of faint white light that had appeared on a stone face. Within the white light were several peculiar runes that were constantly transforming, seemingly conveying a mysterious message. The Heavenly Cauldron Palace, the Blood Soul suddenly murmured to herself, and many sealed memories surged back into her mind. Meanwhile, Han Li seated on a wooden chair in the rented courtyard, carefully inspecting a miniature cauldron that was only several inches tall hovering above his hand. The cauldron was of a faint azure color with an antiquated appearance. Its surface was riddled with carved images of all types of different creatures, and they flashing incessantly with spiritual light, as if they were about to spring to life. Han Li was stroking his own chin, while appraising the miniature cauldron with a contemplative look on his face. In a dark and secluded space within the Myriad Moon mountain range, a faint sigh suddenly rang out. The palace is finally about to open again. After being trapped here for so many years, I'll finally be able to leave. Chapter 2351, The Key. In a small valley on the outskirts of the Myriad Moon mountain range, over 100 high-grade cultivators wearing different attire were gathered together, manning an unknown giant formation. A burly brocade-robed man with an authoritative appearance was standing off to the side, overseeing the proceedings in an expressionless manner. In a swamp that was filled with countless venomous insects, there was a shimmering azure cauldron sitting on a blue stone platform. 3 hideous elderly men were seated around the stone platform with their eyes shut, seemingly cultivating something. The 8 nations near the Qiyun mountain range were all destroyed. How is that possible? In a giant city countless kilometers away, a green-robed elderly man was staring at a yellow-robed man with an incredulous look in his eyes. I wouldn't dare to lie about something like this, Master Bai Ying. Everyone in those 8 nations, regardless of whether they're officials or normal citizens, disappeared a month ago, and not a single survivor was found, the yellow-robed man replied in a fearful manner. What about all the sects in the Qiyun mountain range? Surely they would have noticed something as extraordinary as this, Bai Ying said with a dark expression. I conducted an investigation into this as well, and all of the people in the 19 sects in the Qiyun mountain range also vanished just like the people in the 8 nations, the yellow-robed man replied with a wry smile. They all disappeared as well. Those 19 sects aren't anything noteworthy individually, but combined, they form a formidable power that can't be ignored. Even our trade guild wouldn't be able to wipe them out completely in secret. Haven't you discovered any leads in the wake of something this bizarre? Bai Ying asked. We did manage to discover some leads. As soon as we discovered what had happened, we immediately sent some people to the 8 nations and 19 sects to investigate. Once there, we discovered no signs of struggles taking place in any of the nations or sects, which means that everyone was either voluntarily taken away, or the perpetrator was so powerful that the nations and sects couldn't even resist at all, the yellow-robed man replied. Which one of those do you think is most plausible? Bai Ying asked. I think it's very likely to be the latter, the yellow-robed man replied. Why is that? Setting aside all of the citizens of the 8 nations, there's no way that the cultivators of the 19 sects would have willingly left their sects. On top of that, we discovered some traces of a residual blood Dao aura in the Qi Yun mountain range. As you know, only blood Dao cultivation arts include methods to drastically enhance one's power through blood sacrifices. The residual blood Dao aura in the Qi Yin mountain range was extremely fearsome, so it was definitely left behind by Grand Ascension stage blood Dao powerful beings, and only those beings would do something as brazen as this, the yellow-robed man analyzed. That makes sense. In that case, the perpetrator is most likely the owner of that blood Dao aura. This is an extremely important matter, but the entire trade guild is preparing for the sparring match against the infernal realm, so we can't divert too much of our efforts. Having said that, 2 of those 8 nations are subsidiaries of our trade guild, so we can't just turn a blind eye to this either. Here's what we'll do. The Blood Cry sect and the Wind Snake race are the closest powers to the Qi Yun mountain range, and deliver the results of your investigation to them. Both of those powers have Grand Ascension stage beings among their ranks, and they both have ties to the Qi Yun mountain range, so they'll definitely step in. I'll also ask Taoist Yan Yu to collaborate with the Grand Ascension stage beings of those 2 powers to investigate this matter together, Bai Ying decided. I understand, Master Bai Ying. I'll arrange that right away, the yellow-robed man replied with a respectful bow. There was a huge green lake situated to the north of the Qi Yun mountain range, and there were some fish and prawns swimming within the lake that were visible from the surface. The lake seemed to be as normal could be, but there was an unfathomably deep underwater canyon on the lake bed. A series of profound restrictions had been set up in the air above the canyon, encompassing the entire length of the canyon. Beneath the restrictions were clouds of blood mist that refused to disperse, staining the entire canyon a bright red color, thereby making it impossible to see into the canyon. Beneath these clouds of blood mist was a reddish-black river of blood that was giving off a rank and gory odor. The river was over 1,000 feet wide and stretched as far as the eyes could see, extending into the extremely far distance along the canyon. Atop this flowing river of blood sat a murky humanoid figure who was making a hand seal with one hand, while holding a shimmering object in his other hand. Streaks of viscous blood were flowing into the object incessantly from the river down below. Half a month later, Han Li was meditating in the courtyard when a clear ringing sound suddenly rang out from his body, and his eyes immediately sprang open as he swept a sleeve through the air to release a streak of golden light. This was a golden talisman, and after appraising the talisman for a moment, he stowed it away before vanishing on the spot. Several hours later, Han Li departed from Blood Crane City with the Blood Soul and the others, heading directly toward the Myriad Moon mountain range. Meanwhile, Xiao Ming was situated in the palace at the center of Blood Crane City, and not long after Han Li's departure, he exclaimed, "What? That human Grand Ascension stage being has already left the city and is traveling toward the Myriad Moon mountain range." A man at the body integration stage was standing respectful before Xiao Ming, and he replied, "That's right, I came to inform you right away as soon as Senior Han left the city." "You did well, you can go now," Xiao Ming instructed as he waved a dismissive hand. The man immediately left the hall as he was told. Spatial fluctuations erupted beside Xiao Ming, and Mistress Wan Hua and Taoist Qing Ping appeared. So Han Li also went to the Myriad Moon mountain range. With his powers, that's going to be very troublesome. Mistress Wan Hua was the one who had spoken, and the wariness in her voice clearly indicated that she had been slightly traumatized by Han Li's power. Letter 1D68F, letter 1D563, letter 1D556, letter 1D680, letter 1D680, letter 1D680, letter 1D554, letter 1D428, letter 1D55E. It couldn't be a coincidence, could it? Fellow Taoist Han said himself that he had some other important matters to attend to in this area, and the Heavenly Cauldron Palace hadn't opened yet, so if he's here for it, then he's setting off a little too early, Xiao Ming speculated. I think we'd just be fooling ourselves if we write this off as a coincidence. There is indeed still some time left until the opening of the palace, but fellow Taoist Han isn't the only one who's already gone to wait in the mountain range. There are most likely already many people gathered in the Myriad Moon mountain range, so it wouldn't be surprising if he were going there for the same objective, Taoist Qingping replied in a calm manner. It looks like both of you are of the opinion that fellow Taoist Han is also here for the Heavenly Cauldron Palace, Xiao Ming mused. I can't say for sure, but there's a very good chance that this is the case. Do you have any effective strategies against such a formidable competitor, Brother Xiao? Taoist Qingping asked. That's not required. Regardless of how powerful he is, he won't be able to enter the palace without a key. Even if he does manage to obtain one, the Heavenly Cauldron Palace is filled with restrictions. You're a direct heir to Taoist Tianding, and I'm a master in the art of formations. We have nothing to fear. Xiao Ming chuckled in response. Taoist Qingping faltered slightly upon hearing this before a smile appeared on his face. That's true. Forgive me for my lack of composure. Regardless of how powerful that man is, as long as we can find the core of the palace before him, we'll have nothing to worry about even if he allies himself with other powerful enemies. Mistress Wan Hua's expression also eased significantly upon hearing this. In contrast, a contemplative look appeared on Xiao Ming's face. 7 days later, Han Li was seated on a stone chair in the main hall of a temporary cave, abode he had created in the belly of a mountain in the Myriad Moon mountain range. He was currently listening to a report from the Blood Soul. Hence, my true body created me and left me outside the Heavenly Cauldron Palace with the Heaven Void Cauldron as a safety precaution prior to entering the palace with her key. As long as she doesn't return at a set time, her clone, which is me, would be automatically activated with most of my memories sealed away. According to the divination of my true body, the Heavenly Cauldron Palace is about to appear for a second time soon, and we'll have to enter the palace if we want to save her. The Heaven Void Cauldron is a replica key to the Heavenly Cauldron Palace, refined using a secret technique recorded in the Golden Jade tome. The replica key isn't as potent as a true key, so it would be too dangerous to enter the Heavenly Cauldron Palace through the front entrance. But my true body discovered a weakness in the formation of the Heavenly Cauldron Palace, one that even this replica could exploit for a chance to grant someone entry into the palace. After a while, the Blood Soul finally completed her recount of what had happened to Fairy Ice Soul. I see that you've recovered all of your memories, fellow Taoist Blood Soul. That's truly worthy of celebration. Back when you made that deal with me using the Heaven Void Cauldron, your memories were sealed, so you didn't know about the Heavenly Cauldron Palace and Taoist Tianding. All you knew was that the cauldron was the key to a mysterious place that was extremely alluring even to Grand Ascension stage beings. However, you never said that this cauldron was only a replica key. That seems to be slightly different from the terms of our agreement, Han Li said. Chapter 2352, Emergence. A slightly awkward look appeared on the Blood Soul's face upon hearing this, and she replied, At the time my memories were still sealed, so I had falsely assumed that the Heaven Void Cauldron was a true key. However, I can assure you that if this key really can't grant one access into the Heavenly Cauldron Palace, then I definitely wouldn't dare to force you to take a risk. Having said that, if you do manage to enter the palace, I'm sure the treasures in there won't disappoint you. You already told me a lot about Taoist Tianding. As a cave abode left behind by someone who had ascended to the true immortal realm, this is indeed enough to tempt me. Even setting those treasures aside, I agreed to help you rescue your true body, so I wouldn't revoke my promise for no good reason. Rest assured, with my current powers, there's a chance I'll be able to force my way into the Heavenly Cauldron Palace even without a key. Now that I have this replica key, my chances of entering the palace should be over 90%, Han Li said with a faint smile. Thank you, Senior Han. Once my true body returns, I'll be sure to. Don't thank me yet. Let's rescue fellow Taoist Ice Soul first. Seeing as there's more than one key, and many replica keys have been refined using the secret technique from the Golden Jade tome, I'm sure many powerful beings would have already gathered in this mountain range. This must also be the reason why Mistress Wan Hua and Taoist Qingping came to Blood Crane City, find that Grand Elder of the Blood Bone Sect, Han Li mused. You've already met the Blood Bone Sect Grand Ascension stage being in Blood Crane City. I recall that there were Blood Bone Sect powerful beings who had ventured into the Heavenly Cauldron Palace alongside my true body, and the Blood Bone Sect has one or two true keys. If the Blood Bone Sect sends many of its powerful beings into the Myriad Moon mountain range, then things could get very troublesome, the Blood Soul said with tightly furrowed brows. I don't think that Grand Elder is too keen on inviting other members of his sect. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been approached by other Grand Ascension stage beings. Instead, he most likely hid the fact that he had a key to the Heavenly Cauldron Palace in his possession. most of the other people who possess keys would have most likely also done the same thing. As such, aside from the holders of the keys, the other people who entered the myriad Moon Mountain range most likely only heard about the palace's opening recently. Regardless of how many of those people there are, they won't be able to enter the palace, so they pose no threat to us, Han Li replied with a shake of his head. In that case, the others most likely wouldn't be willing to allow the holders of the keys easy access into the Heavenly Cauldron Palace, Zhu Gyur interjected. There's definitely going to be a battle prior to entering the Heavenly Cauldron Palace, but there's nothing to fear with me here. Having said that, there may be some hazards in the Heavenly Cauldron Palace, so I'll only be entering with fellow Taoist blood soul. In the meantime, you two stay behind and take care not to get discovered. All those who dare to enter the myriad Moon Mountain range at a time like this are definitely no ordinary beings, Han Li instructed. Zhu Gyur and Patriarch Hua, she immediately gave affirmative responses. Fellow Taoist blood soul, according to what you just told me, the Heavenly Cauldron Palace should be opening soon, and that once that happens, the Heaven Void Cauldron should be able to guide us to the exact location, right? Han Li asked. That's right, this is the main reason why there are people fighting over these replica keys as well, the blood soul replied in a confident manner. Good, all we have to do now is prime ourselves into the best condition and wait for the Heavenly Cauldron Palace to appear, Han Li said in a calm manner. The blood soul naturally had no objections to this and immediately nodded in agreement. Thus, Han Li and the others temporarily settled into this cave abode. One day passed by after another, and the myriad Moon Mountain range gradually became more lively and bustling as more and more cultivators arrived. News of the Heavenly Cauldron Palace's imminent emergence had truly spread throughout Blood Crane City, and many of the powerful cultivators in the nearby area were converging toward this mountain range. However, due to the close proximity of Blood Crane City to this mountain range, most of the cultivators present were from the city, and a large proportion of them were Blood-Bone Sect disciples. However, as time passed, more and more people from other areas began to arrive, and this trend was only becoming more and more pronounced. But the myriad Moon Mountain range was a massive place, so this new influx of people wasn't all that noticeable. Some of the more short-tempered and confident arrivals had already begun to go after those whom they thought possessed keys. Even though these actions mostly proved to be futile, a small cauldron really was discovered on the body of someone who had been killed on a certain day, and that cauldron immediately sparked even more bloodshed and conflict. All the while, more and more people from further away were beginning to travel toward the myriad Moon Mountain range, but it was already too late for them to arrive on time. A month and a half later, a mysterious burst of five-colored light suddenly erupted out of a certain pond within the myriad Moon Mountain range, then dissipated into countless runes. Almost at the exact same moment, Han Li awakened from his meditation, then swept a sleeve through the air to release a shimmering azure miniature cauldron. Han Li quickly inspected the peculiar runes that had newly appeared on the cauldron's surface, then immediately transmitted his voice out of the secret chamber he was situated in. Prepared to set off, fellow Taoist blood soul. The blood soul was meditating in another room in the cave abode, and she immediately rose to her feet as an elated look appeared on her face. Moments later, a long streak of azure light shot out of the belly of the mountain before flying toward a certain region of the myriad Moon Mountain range. Similar scenes were unfolding in over 30 other secluded locations in the mountain range. Countless streaks of light emerged from all directions, but all of them were flying toward a common target. These completely undisguised actions naturally alerted many more cultivators in the mountain range, and they immediately followed along. Those who were particularly fast even managed to catch up to the people ahead of them, upon which fierce battles instantly erupted. Letter 1D627, letter 1D4C7, letter 1D452, letter 1D452, letter 1D464, letter 212F, letter 1D624, letter 2134, letter 1D62E. The blood soul was too slow for Han Li's liking, so he had already swept her up into his streak of azure light so they could continue onward as one. At his incredible speed, it was next to impossible for anyone to chase him down. In the eyes of all of the people he passed by, they merely witnessed a flash of azure light before it faded into the distance in a flash, leaving only the sound of his flight echoing throughout the nearby area. All of the bystanders were astonished to see this, and they immediately abandoned any thoughts of pursuing that streak of light, turning their attention to other targets instead. However, beings on the Blood Sky continent were renowned for their valiance, and there were many courageous and conceited individuals on the continent. As the azure streak of light was passing over a wide canyon, a loud buzzing sound suddenly rang out from down below, following which countless runes surged forth in a frenzy to form a profound light formation. "Please wait, fellow Taoist. I have something I wish to discuss with you." A rumbling voice rang out within the formation. The voice held quite a polite tone, but the light formation was releasing a burst of astonishing suction force that was sweeping directly toward the streak of azure light. A cold look appeared in Han Li's eyes upon hearing this, and he didn't bother to offer a response as he thrust a palm down toward the canyon below in a nonchalant manner, releasing a burst of devastating power that was over 10 times as potent as the oncoming burst of suction force. An earth-shattering boom rang out as the suction force and light formation were both instantly destroyed, and even a section of the canyon that was several kilometers in length had caved in significantly. The person hiding in the area didn't have a chance to evade before his body was reduced to mincemeat, and even his nascent soul had been destroyed. As for the streak of azure light, it didn't even pause for an instant as it quickly vanished into the distant sky. Moments later, several streaks of crimson light flew out from behind a nearby small mountain, then converged in the air above the canyon. This was a group of 7 or 8 people in different attire, and all of them possessed powerful auras, but they were currently appraising the remains of their companions with dark expressions. "Should we give chase and avenge fellow Taoistya?" a green-robed young man asked. "Are you kidding me? Fellow Taoistya picked a fight with the wrong opponent, so he can't blame anyone for this," a long-haired man replied without any hesitation. "Brother Ya's powers weren't inferior to ours, so even against a Grand Ascension stage being, he should have been able to hold his own for a while. The fact that he was instantly killed indicates that he picked a fight with someone who's extremely powerful even among Grand Ascension stage beings, and we definitely wouldn't be able to fare any better. If you want to avenge him, then go on your own. There's no way we're getting involved," a hideous elderly man said. "It seems I was too rash in my proposal. I wouldn't dare to challenge such a formidable being either. Having said that, we can no longer keep waiting here like this, so we'll have to hurry to the site where the Heavenly Cauldron Palace is going to appear to see if we can do something there," the young woman replied with a slightly awkward smile. Thus, the group quickly departed from the canyon after a brief discussion. A dull thump rang out as Han Li pointed a finger from afar toward a giant of a man who was several tens of feet tall, and the man's head immediately exploded alongside the nascent soul within it. His headless body plummeted out of the heavens, and the azure streak of light pierced directly through the bodies of several people standing behind the man, slicing them in half before vanishing into the distance. Chapter 2353, Giant Gate. After easily crushing several groups of people who had been foolish enough to get in his way, Han Li and the Blood Soul finally arrived in the air above a basin after traveling for around 4 hours. The basin was surrounded by a ring of mountains of different sizes, while patches of shrubs were situated at its center. A 5-colored pillar of light with a diameter of around half a kilometer was currently erupting out of a pond that had almost been entirely concealed by the shrubs, and the pillar of light was extending directly into the heavens. There were already 3 groups of people who had arrived at the edge of the basin earlier than Han Li, and they were appraising one another with cold expressions. All of a sudden, Han Li and the Blood Soul appeared in another direction, and the 3 groups all turned their attention toward the duo. The fearsome auras being directed toward them made the Blood Soul's expression change slightly, and she was struck by the involuntary urge to take a few backward steps. Right at this moment, Han Li strode forward and positioned himself in front of the Blood Soul from an incredible angle, while simultaneously releasing some of his own spiritual pressure. The formidable auras being directed toward the Blood Soul were instantly scattered, and her expression eased slightly as she cast her gaze toward the 3 groups of people nearby. As for Han Li, he took a glance at the 5-colored pillar of light first before inspecting everyone else present. The group with the fewest people was comprised of a middle-aged man and woman, who appeared to be a couple. The man had thick brows with a dark complexion, and was quite ordinary in appearance. In contrast, the woman was extremely seductive and was giving off an astonishing allure. The 2 vastly differing figures standing side by side created a very peculiar contrast. Among the 2, the woman was giving off a Grand Ascension stage aura, while the man's aura was undetectable even to Han Li. Furthermore, his body was enshrouded under a layer of invisible energy fluctuations, so it was clear that he was carrying some type of treasure that could keep out the spiritual sense of others. Han Li was rather surprised by this, but he then cast his gaze toward another group, which was comprised of 5 young men who were identical in both appearance and attire. They all appeared to around 20 years of age, and even their expressions and mannerisms were extremely similar. There were icy cold looks in their eyes that were completely devoid of warmth, and they were all at the late body integration stage. A contemplative look appeared on Han Li's face as he examined the auras of those 5 young men, but he then cast his gaze toward the final group. This was the group with the most people, numbering over 100 in total. Most of these people were at the spatial tempering stage with only a few body integration stage beings among them, but they had set a profound formation around an authoritative-looking brocade-robed man. This man's aura indicated that he was a grand ascension stage being. Han Li only took a brief glance at the brocade-robed man before directing his attention to the people beside the man, seemingly rather interested in the formation they had set up. The other 3 groups had naturally also already identified Han Li as a grand ascension stage being, and they were all appraising him with different expressions, but no one paid any heed to the blood soul. It was clear that a spatial tempering stage being like her wasn't worthy of attention in their eyes. In contrast, Han Li was completely unfamiliar to all of them, and his aura was quite unfathomable, evoking a sense of wariness in their hearts. The 4 groups had each taken up a side of the basin, but they were merely hovering in silence in midair, displaying no intention to talk. All of a sudden, 2 more groups of people shot forth toward the basin from a distance. The 2 groups arrived near the basin at the same time, then drew to an abrupt halt. Upon identifying one of the groups, Han Li's expression changed slightly, but quickly reverted back to normal again. That group of people was comprised of none other than Xiao Ming, Taoist Qing Ping, and Mistress Wan Hua. As for the other group, it contained 3 thin and hideous elderly men wearing different expressions. Letter 1D453, letter 1D45F, letter 212F, letter 1D626, letter 1D4CC, letter 1D626, letter 1D450, letter 2134, letter 1D4C2. Their auras were extremely powerful, and they were also all grand ascension stage beings. Everyone's expressions aside from that of Han Li changed slightly at the sight of the 6 new grand ascension stage arrivals. Xiao Ming swept his gaze over the surrounding area, and he immediately spotted Han Li, upon which his pupils contracted slightly, but he still put on a smile and said, "What a coincidence that you're here as well, fellow Taoist Han. If I had known you were coming here, I would have invited you to come with us. Didn't you say you had other important matters to attend to? Were you referring to this heavenly cauldron palace?" "That's right, I didn't think that we were pursuing the same target. Otherwise, I would have also been happy to join you," Han Li replied in a calm manner. "I'm sure you wouldn't lie about something like this. What a pity. I felt like we had formed a close bond, and I would have loved to have communicated with you further." Xiao Ming sighed as if he really were feeling quite forlorn and disappointed. The Grand Ascension stage middle-aged woman suddenly chuckled. "Hee hee, since when did the vastly renowned deranged devil of the blood-bone sect become so mellow? Did you undergo a drastic personality change as you were in seclusion for too long? It's a pleasure to meet you here, Patriarch Wu Gu and Fairy Huazai. I heard Brother Wu Gu sustained some injuries in a battle against a Sin dragon some years ago. Have you already recovered?" Xiao Ming's question was directed toward the man accompanying the seductive woman. "Thank you for your concern, fellow Taoist Xiao. Not only has my Tao companion already recovered, he encountered some opportunities recently, and his powers have been even further enhanced compared to before," Fairy Huazai replied before the man could say anything. Patriarch Wu Gu merely gave a faint smile, displaying no intention to say anything. Xiao Ming's brows furrowed slightly as he appraised this renowned Grand Ascension stage couple with a slightly peculiar look, but then directed his attention toward the brocade-robed man instead. "Brother Feng, I didn't think that a sect master like you would venture into such a perilous place with so many of your sect's disciples. Aren't you afraid that all of the elite members of your sect will perish here, leaving your sect to fall into complete decline?" A hint of enmity crept into Xiao Ming's voice as he spoke, and it was clear that they weren't on good terms. "HMPH, you came here, so why couldn't I come? Did Taoist Tian Ding hail from your blood-bone sect? Besides, our sect was founded on the foundation of the art of formations. If I want to secure the treasures in the heavenly cauldron palace, I naturally have to bring enough subordinates to set up my formations. As for the condition of our sect, that's not something that warrants your concern, Brother Xiao," the brocade-robed man harumphed coldly in response. A cold look flashed through Zhao Ming's eyes upon seeing this, and he didn't say anything further as he turned toward the 5 identical young men. The 5 Zhu He clones pay their respects to fellow Taoist Zhao. The 5 young men greeted Zhao Ming as they each cupped a fist in a salute, and their actions were completely synchronized. Even though the 5 young men were only at the late body integration stage, a wary look flashed through Zhao Ming's eyes as he returned the salute in a polite manner. "I've heard much about you, fellow Taoist Zhu He. It's very remarkable that you were willing to sacrifice your grand ascension stage cultivation base to split your nascent soul up into 5 clones to cultivate all of them to the grand ascension stage. I must concede that my willpower is inferior to yours." "You're far too kind, fellow Taoist Zhao. We had no choice but to do this in a bid for survival," the 5 young men replied in a cold and wooden manner, as if they really had lost all emotions. A faint smile appeared on Zhao Ming's face, and he was just about to say something further when his expression changed drastically, and he immediately cast his gaze toward the 5-colored pillar of light. In the next instant, the massive pillar of light began to emit a loud buzzing sound, while expanding outward at a rate that was discernible to the naked eye. In the blink of an eye, the pillar of light had formed a bright 5-colored light barrier that enshrouded the entire basin. Han Li and the others didn't require any instructions, as they sprang back to retreat out of the basin, as they looked on with serious expressions. A burst of loud rumbling rang out within the 5-colored light barrier, following which violent spatial fluctuations surged through the entire area in a radius of hundreds of kilometers. A white spatial rift appeared up above, and it was rapidly torn open further and further, revealing a series of intricate palatial projections. The rumbling suddenly ceased, and the 5-colored light barrier began to surge toward the rift as countless rays of light, instantly sealing the entire rift. Immediately thereafter, the air above the basin began to tremor violently, and a massive 5-colored gate that was over 100,000 feet tall suddenly appeared. Its surface was riddled with countless golden and silver runes, giving it an otherworldly appearance. Han Li's pupils immediately contracted slightly at the sight of these runes. These were none other than beveled silver text and golden sealed text of the true immortal realm. As expected of someone who had successfully ascended, this Taoist Tian Ding was a master in these 2 types of immortal spirit texts. "This is the gate of the Heavenly Cauldron Palace. Anyone who can open it will be able to use a key to break through the seal beyond it in order to enter the Heavenly Cauldron Palace," Fairy Hua said as she stared at the giant gate with a slightly entranced look in her eyes. "HMPH, now that this gate has appeared, everyone else is going to arrive soon, so I'm going to take the initiative and enter it first," the brocade-robed man said as a hint of greed flashed through his eyes. Chapter 2354, 2 Cauldrons. As soon as his voice trailed off, he issued an order, and all of the sect members around him immediately summoned formation treasures of different descriptions, then began to chant in unison. All of a sudden, a yellow light formation began to take shape above their heads, and it released around a dozen pillars of white light, all of which instantly formed a straight line to strike the giant gate. A burst of loud rumbling rang out as countless white runes were repelled by the gate, which remained completely still and displayed no sign of opening. Everyone was quite stunned to see this, but as opposed to being alarmed, a faint smile appeared on the brocade-robed man's face. "I didn't think that just this gate would be so difficult to open. It looks like I'll have to display some of my true power." As soon as his voice trailed off, he made a hand seal while chanting something before pointing a finger up toward the light formation in the air. The light formation immediately turned a silver color, and thousands of small silver swords surfaced within it amid flashes of spiritual light. "Go," the brocade-robed man commanded as he swept a sleeve toward the massive gate. All of the small silver swords surged out of the light formation in a ferocious torrent, then combined as one mid-flight to form a giant silver sword that was over 10,000 feet in length before slashing toward the gate with devastating force. A sharp ringing sound erupted as a silver line appeared on the surface of the gate. The entire sky tremored violently, and the golden and silver runes on the gate's surface flashed as a gap slowly opened up where the silver line was. The gap wasn't very wide, but it was enough to grant everyone access. The brocade-robed man was ecstatic to see this, and he released a burst of light to sweep up all of his subordinates before flying into the gate in a flash as a streak of silver light. At the same time, Fairy Huazai and Patriarch Wu Gu also sprang into action, flying toward the gap on the giant gate as a unified streak of azure light. However, the streak of azure light was repelled by a burst of invisible force when it was still over 1,000 feet away from the gate. Immediately thereafter, the gash that had been sliced onto the surface of the gate instantly vanished amid a flash of golden and silver light. Meanwhile, the repelled streak of light faded to reveal Fairy Huazai and Patriarch Wu Gu again. Fairy Huazai had a surprised look on her face, while Patriarch Wu Gu's expression was as wooden as ever. I had thought that we'd be able to save some energy and get into the gate on the back of Sect Master Feng's efforts, but it looks like I was too optimistic. Go ahead and open this gate for us, my Dao companion, Fairy Huazai said with a faint smile. Patriarch Wu Gu nodded in response before a burst of black light suddenly erupted all over his body, and he slowly thrust a palm toward the giant gate. His ordinary-looking palm instantly swelled to around the size of a pavilion, then struck the giant gate with vicious force. A dull thump rang out, and scintillating light radiated from the gate as a hole with a diameter of around 10 feet appeared on its surface. Fairy Huazai was ecstatic to see this, and she immediately flew into the hole along with Patriarch Wu Gu, following which the giant gate instantly regenerated itself again. Looks like only one group will be able to enter at a time. We'll be going on ahead, fellow Taoists. One of the thin, elderly men cackled. Letter 1D627, letter 1D45F, letter 1D452, letter 1D452, letter 1D638, letter 1D626, letter 1D624, letter 1D630, letter 1D4C2. Immortal Heavenly Lord, all three of them appeared in front of the giant gate in a flash, then each thrust a palm toward it at the same time. 3 bursts of tremendous power surged forth, and a burst of loud rumbling rang out as the gate was slowly pushed open, thereby granting the trio entry. Brother, would you like to go ahead? Zio Ming suddenly asked. Thank you for your kind offer, fellow Taoist Zio. Fellow Taoist Blood Soul, let's go in as well, Han Li said. Yes, Senior, the Blood Soul replied as she lowered her head slightly. Thus, Han Li swept a sleeve through the air to release a burst of golden light, which swept up the Blood Soul before he took a step forward. A faint burst of spatial fluctuations erupted, and both of them vanished in a flash. In the next instant, spatial fluctuations emerged near the giant gate as well, and Han Li and the Blood Soul reappeared. Han Li continued to stride casually toward the gate, and the Blood Soul naturally followed along closely behind him. All of a sudden, a layer of silver flames instantly enshrouded Han Li's entire body, and he crashed directly into the giant gate in a flash. A burst of barely audible sizzling rang out, and a human-shaped hole was melted into the gate, while Han Li had passed through it as if it didn't even exist. The Blood Soul was already aware that Han Li's powers had reached an incredible level, but she still faltered slightly upon seeing the gate being opened so easily. However, she quickly returned to her senses and rushed through the gate as well, following which the human-shaped hole slowly faded. Almost at the exact same moment, the 5 Zhuhi clones also made their move. Moments later, Zio Ming's trio were the only ones left on the edge of the basin. Let's go in as well, Brother Zio, Mistress Wan Hua urged. Don't be too eager, fellow Taoist Wan Hua. Do you really think that's all the people here? Someone else has arrived as well but is simply unwilling to come out and meet us. Zio Ming chuckled as he cast a meaningful gaze toward a certain direction. What? There's someone else hiding here. Mistress Wan Hua and Taoist Qing Ping immediately turned toward the same direction upon hearing this. Doesn't matter. Let them do as they please as long as they don't interfere with what we're doing. Besides, I'm not the only one who noticed. Everyone else pretended to be oblivious, so why should we do anything? Let's go. Zio Ming withdrew his gaze before sweeping a sleeve through the air to release a ball of silver light, which transformed into a giant halo with a diameter of over 100 feet, then crashed into the giant gate with ferocious might. Around 15 minutes, spatial fluctuations erupted in the direction that Zio Ming had cast his gaze toward earlier, and a crimson humanoid figure emerged. The figure had a set of blurry facial features, and he cast a cold gaze toward the giant gate, seemingly contemplating something. Right at this moment, several more streaks of light appeared in the distance. The crimson figure immediately turned toward those oncoming streaks of light, and a hint of bloodlust appeared in his eyes as he twisted around and sped toward them as a streak of crimson light. A few moments later, a string of anguished howls rang out in that direction, and all of the streaks of light vanished as a bloody odor wafted through the air. So this is a seal created by Taoist Tian Ding himself. As expected, it looks quite formidable. A hint of admiration appeared in Han Li's eyes as he appraised the light barrier up ahead, which was formed by countless five-colored spirit runes. The seal was several hundred kilometers in length and blocked up the entire entrance. Thus, as soon as everyone entered the murky gray space beyond the giant gate, they immediately split up, choosing sections of the seal that were extremely far away from one another to target. As a result, Han Li and the Blood Soul were the only two people in this area. Apparently, this seal was created by Taoist Tian Ding only a year prior to his ascension, so it's virtually the most powerful seal-type restriction in our spirit realm. Even if a grand ascension stage being were to try and break through it by force, they'd have to expend several centuries to slowly refine the seal with their nascent soul flame. Otherwise, access beyond the seal would be impossible. However, the palace only appears for about a month before it vanishes again, and the keys of the palace have only appeared in recent years. Prior to the emergence of those keys, even if one were to force their way in through this giant gate, they wouldn't be able to go beyond this seal and secure any treasures. After that, people began to create replica keys, and only then did the number of people able to venture into the palace increase slightly, the Blood Soul explained. Is this seal really that powerful? I'm very intrigued now, Han Li said as a hint of interest was sparked in his eyes. The Blood Soul smiled upon hearing this, and she was just about to reply when a burst of energy fluctuation suddenly surged through this entire space from a certain direction. Immediately thereafter, the entire seal tremored slightly, and all of the spirit runes within it began to flash erratically. However, the disturbance quickly subsided mere moments later, and it was as if nothing had ever happened. Han Li's expression changed slightly upon seeing this. Someone's already broken the seal this quickly. They must have used a true key. There's no way a replica would be able to break the seal so quickly, the Blood Soul said. In that case, there's no time to waste with experimentation. What's the shortcut you were referring to earlier? It's about time you revealed it, is it nor? Han Li asked as his brows furrowed slightly. Please summon the Heaven Void Cauldron, Senior Han, the Blood Soul requested. Sure, Han Li replied without any hesitation, then flipped a hand over to produce the Heaven Void Cauldron, which was enshrouded within a ball of azure light. The Blood Soul glanced at the cauldron before suddenly opening her mouth to release another ball of azure light, which also contained a small azure cauldron. Han Li faltered slightly upon seeing this, while the Blood Soul explained, "This is known as the Immortality Cauldron, and it's also a replica key. On top of that, it's the most successfully created replica and possesses 70% of the efficacy of a true key." Chapter 2355, Entrance. The Immortality Cauldron. Could it be that this cauldron will be able to break through the seal with ease? Han Li asked. Letter 1D557, letter 1D42B, letter 1D41E, letter 1D556, letter 1D568, letter 1D41E, letter 1D41C, letter 1D5FC, letter 1D696. Of course not. The shortcut that I mentioned still requires the Heaven Void Cauldron to be the main treasure to break the seal, while I can only use the Immortality Cauldron to unleash a secret technique to assist you. During the refinement of this treasure, my true body mixed a drop of her blood essence into this cauldron, so it has some abilities beyond those of a normal replica key, the Blood Soul replied. You seem quite confident that this will work, so let's give it a try. If this doesn't work out, then I'll use my magic power to try and break the seal by force, Han Li decided. The Blood Soul naturally had no objections and immediately nodded in agreement. Thus, Han Li immediately tossed his cauldron up into the air, then swept a sleeve toward it to release a pillar of azure light, which vanished into the cauldron in a flash. In the next instant, the Heaven Void Cauldron swelled to over 100 feet tall, and projections of the creatures etched on its surface began to emerge before revolving around the cauldron. The Blood Soul also immediately sprang into action upon seeing this. She raised her cauldron upward, before opening her mouth to expel several balls of blood essence toward it. The balls of blood essence exploded into clouds of blood mist, which instantly surrounded the small cauldron as if it had a mind of its own. The Blood Soul then began to chant an incantation, and she rushed into the blood mist as a blurry crimson shadow. The Immortality Cauldron immediately began to revolve on the spot, absorbing the surrounding blood mist before countless crimson runes were released out of its opening, forming the face of a beautiful woman. Its appearance was completely identical to that of the Blood Soul, but it was completely expressionless and enshrouded under a layer of faint crimson light. Senior Han, I only have power for a single strike, so make sure to wait for the right opportunity before you move, the face said, then opened its mouth to release a flurry of translucent crimson threads. All of a sudden, the woman's face let loose a shrill cry, and all of the crimson threads exploded in a flash, following which the dense blood mist converged to form a series of crimson runes that embedded themselves onto the surface of the five-colored light barrier. Han Li's eyes lit up upon seeing this, and he immediately flew over to the barrier before thrusting a palm against it. A loud clang akin to a giant gong being struck rang out, and radiant azure light erupted from the surface of the giant cauldron. The projections of the creatures around the cauldron also swelled in size before flying toward the five-colored light barrier. As soon as the projections came into contact with the light barrier, they were able to directly enter the barrier through the crimson runes. In the next instant, the surface of the heaven-void cauldron began to flash erratically, and the five-colored light barrier within a radius of several kilometers began to emit a loud buzzing sound. At the same time, wisps of white chi surged out of the crimson runes, then instantly dispersed in all directions as bursts of energy fluctuations. A hint of elation appeared on Han Li's face upon seeing this, and it seemed that their strategy was working. However, right at this moment, a muffled groan suddenly rang out, and the crimson light over the woman's face faded as it threw up a mouthful of black blood. At the same time, the entire face began to warp and blur. You're suffering from backlash. Leave the rest to me, Han Li said as his brows furrowed slightly, following which he swept a sleeve behind him to release a burst of azure light which vanished into the woman's face in a flash. The face immediately shattered, then returned to the emperor-void cauldron as countless crimson runes. Crimson light flashed within the cauldron, and a projection flew out of the cauldron before transforming into the blood soul again. At this moment, her face was very pale, and she was appraising Han Li with a complex look in her eyes. In contrast, Han Li paid no heed to what was going on behind him as he made a hand seal, and the Provenance True Devil projection appeared behind him amid a flash of golden light. The projection opened its 6 eyes in unison, then reached out to place all 6 of its palms onto the giant cauldron. A burst of loud rumbling rang out as scintillating azure light began to radiate from the cauldron's surface, making it appear as if an incandescent azure sun had appeared. The crimson runes on the surface of the five-colored light barrier also began to glow brightly, as if to resonate with the cauldron, and more white chi began to emerge. Finally, a dull thump rang out as the entire seal was shattered, and a black passageway was revealed. "Let's go," Han Li instructed with an elated expression as he withdrew his Provenance True Devil projection, then pointed a finger toward the heaven-void cauldron. 2 bursts of azure light immediately erupted from the surface of the cauldron. Sweeping up both Han Li and the blood soul before it sped into the passageway was a ball of azure light. Almost at the exact same moment that the cauldron flew into the passageway, the entire seal began to rapidly regenerate amid a flurry of 5-colored runes. As soon as the cauldron emerged from the black passageway, the surrounding area immediately brightened, and a lush lawn that was bathed in warm sunlight appeared up ahead. Han Li swept a sleeve through the air, and the azure light around him immediately converged to revert back into the heaven-void cauldron, which he caught in his grasp. At this moment, the blood spirit also appeared behind him, before inspecting her surroundings with an ecstatic expression. This was a space that was virtually no different from the outside world, complete with undulating mountain peaks and lush forests, and there was no end to this landscape in sight in any direction. Han Li's eyes narrowed slightly upon seeing this, and he immediately released his enormous spiritual sense, upon which an enlightened look quickly appeared on his face. So this is only an illusion. Tusk, what an advanced illusion. It's quite rare to see an illusion that was almost able to fool even me, Han Li praised before sweeping a finger through the air, releasing a streak of azure sword chi that instantly extended to several thousand feet in length before slashing down from above. The space several kilometers up ahead immediately began to warp and blur, following which the entire illusion fell away to reveal a cluster of giant palaces. There were giant pillars of light situated between the palaces, and each pillar of light was supporting a light barrier that enshrouded the buildings nearby, dividing the clusters of palaces into over 100 areas. Blue light flashed through Han Li's eyes, and he was able to quickly make sense of the scene before him. It turned out that each area had a main palace that was accompanied by around a dozen other buildings of different sizes, But as Han Li attempted to inspect his buildings using his spiritual sense, it was instantly repelled. It seemed that some type of spiritual sense restriction had been set up on these buildings. However, as he swept his spiritual sense over these areas, he discovered that the closer a palace cluster was to the center, the thicker the pillar of light supporting the light barrier above the cluster would be, and the more difficult spiritual sense detection became. Han Li swept his spiritual sense toward the largest of the light barriers at the very center of the palace clusters, and he discovered that he could only sense the rough outlines of the buildings inside. Furthermore, this was only possible as his spiritual sense was far more powerful than other cultivators of the same caliber. If a normal Grand Ascension stage beings were in his place, their spiritual sense most likely wouldn't even be able to pierce through some of the light barriers here. It seems that the most important treasures are all in those areas, Han Li murmured to himself in a contemplative manner as he withdrew his spiritual sense. The Blood Soul's face was still rather pale, and a hint of concern appeared on her face as she swept her spiritual sense toward the palace clusters. Indeed, but it looks like the further in we go, the more dangerous it'll be. We've already come all the way here, so we can't go back empty-handed. The treasures in the outer areas have most likely already been taken, and most treasures won't be of any interest to me anyway, so I'll have to make my way toward the center. By the way, have you managed to sense the presence of your true body yet? Han Li asked. I've tried to locate her, but there are too many restrictions in the Heavenly Cauldron Palace, so I won't be able to sense her unless I'm very close, the Blood Soul replied with a wry smile. I see. That makes things a little troublesome. You'll most likely have to search through every cluster of buildings here to be able to find where she's trapped, but the Heavenly Cauldron Palace is only open for a month. Even I can't guarantee that I would be able to explore all of the restrictions here, Han Li said as his brows furrowed slightly. My true body was quite powerful and possessed a few formidable treasures, so even against a Grand Ascension stage being, she would have a good chance of getting away. If she were trapped somewhere, then it would most likely be in the inner areas. However, just in case we miss her, I'll start searching from the outskirts. You can take a drop of blood essence of mine that's had a secret technique applied to it. If my true body is trapped nearby, the blood essence will alert you. That way, you'll be able to search for treasures in my true body simultaneously, the Blood Soul suggested. That's a good idea, and it would be viable if we were the only ones in here. But what if the other Grand Ascension stage beings in here decide to target you? Han Li asked. The Blood Soul's expression changed slightly upon hearing this, but she then replied, Rest assured, Senior Han, with the body integration stage puppet you gave me, I should be able to hold my own against a Grand Ascension stage being. Those two body integration stage puppets would be somewhat effective against normal Grand Ascension stage beings, but all of the Grand Ascension stage beings who have entered this place are most likely quite formidable. As a safety precaution, you can take Jin Tong with you, Han Li decided after a brief moment of contemplation.